And I heard another voice from heaven, saying, Come out of her, my people, that you be not partakers of her sins, and that you receive not of her plagues. For her sins have reached into heaven, and Elohim hath remembered her plagues.
Welcome, everybody, to Exiting Babylon. And this is focused on correcting your status and talking about different things that can be done to remove yourself from the system and remove yourself in a manner that you can move about freely and not be harassed, hopefully, too much. And so with that, I'm Marshall Swilley on Colorado, and tonight we have Troy Matheson joining us. And I'm going to go ahead and turn the floor over to Troy. And Troy, if you could tell us a little bit about yourself, and we'll go ahead and proceed from there.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us on the call, Exiting Babylon. Let's see, about me. Well, I come from a background of engineering. My work has been mainly in multimedia development as well as energy devices, and I'm an aspiring quantum theorist with my own theories that I'm actually starting to publish. But I got into law-related stuff pretty heavily in about 1997. We were having some issues here in the town I live in, or at the time lived in, with police abuses. And I started going to these police meetings and town hall meetings and stuff and discussing the issues and trying to work out workable solutions. I didn't really get heavy into learning about law until about 2005, when I started focusing on what really is law with a capital L versus law with a small l, which generally falls under the heading of legal systems. And so the more I dove into it, really I focused on universal, natural, common, and constitutional law. And I really didn't have any regard, and still kind of don't, at least in relation to that which is legal having any power over that which is real and living. So I started doing talk shows, various talk shows with various entities around the planet, actually. I've done lawful counsel for folks in New Zealand, Australia, Canada, the U.S., the UK, and other countries as well. And I ended up getting involved with a group called the New Earth a couple of years back, who was developing a tribunal called the International Tribunal for Natural Justice, and I worked with them on developing their policies, procedures, practices, standards, and protocols, and what have you. And then eventually moved away from that when they were too focused on what's called international commercial trade. Commercial law, and my interests really lied in international trade law. And so I've still been focusing on that which is real, with not very much focus on that which is fictional. I did eventually cancel any and all state and federal contracts. Those that I did not may still have standing, but they will be challenged immediately for their legitimacy upon approach by agents of these private incorporated entities. And that's about it. I guess I yield to any questions, and I'm looking forward to what everybody's working on and what they've got to say. And thank you.
Thank you, Troy. Excuse me. Caught me right after swallowing a bite of food. You know something about the document that is sent to your local, chancellor or bishop, or that goes to the Vatican?
Well, when we talk about these legal claims over people, there's kind of three things going on here. There's a claim to all of our property. There's also a claim to our body, and there's also a claim on our souls. And so when we're trying to settle issues that have to do with our body, that's usually in the jurisdiction of the state. When we talk about our property, that generally falls under federal so-called codes or regulations or statutes, what have you. And when we talk about the ownership claim on our souls, we're talking about the Vatican, basically. And there's different processes involved for each of those three realms of our existence that others have laid claim on through certification and registration and whatnot. So, yeah, I yield to any questions.
Okay, I'd like to go ahead and open up the floor. Does anybody have any questions for Troy? I don't know how many people are on the call.
If I may.
Please.
Troy, this is Roger in Florida.
Hey, Roger, how are you?
Doing great, and yourself?
I'm doing great, thank you.
Good, good. Troy, have you personally removed yourself from all of these three jurisdictions that you talked about or domains?
No, I have not. The reason being is that myself, which I am a self-proclaimed man of the law, don't see any need to ask these pirates, for lack of a better word, for acknowledgement or permission to be free of their system. So they have actually, in many cases, for example, I used to have a driver's license. I let it lapse. I did not cancel that contract. Actually, the Department of Motor Vehicles and the Department of Transportation canceled that contract for me. So they no longer have any jurisdiction or authority over me, being as they are the ones that canceled that contract. And I've done that with virtually any and all other contracts that are either state or federal. And since then, they haven't come and said, hey, wait a minute, you can't do that. So I'm ready for them when they do try to do that. But no, I have not bothered with the legal process, because I feel that playing in that realm, I'm still in their pool. I'm still sitting at their game board. And I would rather challenge anything and everything that they throw at me through maxims of law, which can basically show them that they are actually acting in fraud and in violation of true law.
I like your approach a lot. I'm thinking along the exact same ways. The only action that I've done so far is I did rescind my voter registration card. Have you done that?
Actually, I have never voted at the federal level.
Wow. Good for you. I yield.
Thank you.
If I may?
Please.
Have you done any type of, like, affidavit, just kind of stating, I guess, your political status, if you want to call it that? Just saying, hey, I'm a man, and...
Sure. That is something I do help people with, but I myself have never written an affidavit because I have never been accused of a crime. I have no criminal record whatsoever. I just kind of make myself available to answer questions that people might have with their status, whether that be changing their status. So I'm involved with a lot of people, like the Superior Court Justices for the continental United States, of which I have signed my oath but have not been able to get pushed through the de facto here in my state, because they don't want to put somebody like myself into a position to start prosecuting them for their crimes against the people. So while I've signed my oath, it's been witnessed, it's been sealed, and all of that stuff, I have not acted in that capacity at this time, because here in Oregon, we've got a real problem with organizing our de jure system here. You know, for example, a few years ago, I was working with the National Liberty Alliance group to get all 36 counties in Oregon unified under common law. And we did that. It took about, it took about 8 months, I guess. And then I found out that the National Liberty Alliance was actually an incorporated entity, and that the guy behind it was actually a bar member. And so we kind of have to redo all of that declaration of authority here in Oregon. But the people who were involved at that time all got really scared because they didn't know how to operate within true law of the land jurisdiction. They were all thinking that they were subject, mainly, if you want my honest opinion, to their own fears that they might endure retaliation for trying to become real people instead of allowing others to capitalize on their personage, basically. So I've helped a lot of folks with affidavits. I have never had to write one myself. I have yet to write a court order process, which I will be happy to do once we can get, for example, my filing done privately here in the state with a legitimate government. But Oregon has no legitimate government at this time, and I'm not going to play their game by trying to force them on the issue. So in the meantime, I'm kind of like bound from helping people as much as I would like to until we have proper jury administrators in place, so those jury administrators can perform their investigations upon reception of a claim or a complaint, and then begin the presentment process. And we're also really short on justices here. There's only myself and one other justice. The other justice, Judge Darby, is legitimate, but he had to do all of his private filings in a clerk's office outside of the state. So I have a fear for him that down the road here, he's going to try and do something here within the state of Oregon. And being that he's still kind of delving a little bit in the de facto world, it might come back on him. And so I'll be standing by to help him in any and every way I can. But we have essentially no marshals that I'm aware of that we could consider continental de jure marshals. And the jurist pool aspect is the weakest link, because we need jurors who know who they are and know when a personage can come into play and when they can capitalize on that, versus when they need to stand their ground and say, no, I'm a real person and I'm not buying into any personage. So we've got some work to do in Oregon.
So you don't have a driver's license right now, or like registration on your car, or anything like that?
No. Technically, under the law, you do not. We're talking law with a small L. If the car is older than 3 years old, you do not need insurance on it. Also, if you have the manufacturer's statement of origin, or if you wish to get that, and if you don't have it, chances are great that it doesn't exist. But you can write your Department of Motor Vehicles and say, I've got a VIN number here. I want you to send me the manufacturer's statement of origin on that. The DMV is either going to tell you that we don't have it, and in that case, you can request that they send you a letter stating that is certified mail. So that way you can say in the future, if you get pulled over, well, this car belongs to me in total. I don't have the MSO because that was sold and resold again as a bundled investment asset by the banks, which is they love to do that little game, with the shell game with their with other people's property to hide the trail of fraud. But in any event, no, you do not need registration on a private automobile in a private conveyance, period. So, that's what I was saying earlier about people have to know who they are and when they have to stand their ground as a real person or buy into the personage thing, because there are advantages to personage. Those advantages essentially are limited liability. When you act as a man or a woman, there is no such thing as limited liability. Any harm you cause, you are subject to the law and a decision by a proper de jure grand jury.
All right, thank you. So when have you had any encounters with the de facto and had, problems with not having the registration or insurance or anything like that?
And no, I can tell you the last time I got pulled over, I actually did have a driver's license and insurance and registration on the what they call the vehicle. But the detective that pulled me over, because I was in what he called a bad neighborhood, and I had just moved to that state about 2 months before, so I had no idea of where the hell I was. I allowed him to search the vehicle, and he came up with drug paraphernalia, and I was facing 5 years in prison for that paraphernalia that was planted in my vehicle by a so-called sheriff's detective. So I called up a friend of mine, and we coordinated with the sheriff's department and the district attorney's office that was going to be forwarding my case to the judge, and I threatened them verbally, not even in writing. I threatened them verbally. I said, listen, if you don't drop this matter from my record, then I will expose your fraud in your court. And they stood down. So I never even had to write up an affidavit or a notice of error or any of that.
Oh, that's great.
So you actually threatened the judge and not the detective.
I have a question for the board operator. Sure. I have a friend here who I talked to you earlier about with joining the call, and he is currently muted. Let me get his phone number. He would love to jump in. What is your phone number? 503 267 8100. Can you please unmute them, and they can join us in on this conversation? This gentleman is very knowledgeable, and we go back 40 years.
Sure, go ahead. Floor is open.
So much.
Hold on just a second. I will. It's 503?
Yes.
I think I muted him because there was noise coming in on his line. I'll go ahead and unmute him now.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry. I apologize for my coughing spree earlier. That was causing the problem. On the subject that we're talking about, I'm involved in such a case. Now, I have been traveling lawfully for the last 4 years without a driver's license, without vehicle registration, and I'm working on a HKR 192 personal liability bond that is good for $5 million. All you have to do is file it with the state recorder's office, and that goes out to every code enforcement agency. Now, in reading the law, there are a myriad of court cases that say the right to travel unhindered, unfettered, is a right, not a privilege, and you cannot convert a right to a privilege. Even if you look at in our case, the Oregon vehicle codes, they offer 3 classes of licenses, and all 3 are commercial. When you put a plate on your car and register it, you are giving them legal title. Now, when my registration expired, that legal title reverted to me as not only holder in due course, but holder in fact of that private property. My automobile was marked with plates that said private property for non-commercial use only, not for hire. I had not for hire stickers on my windows. I was stopped the other day by the Oregon State Police, and the officer acknowledged on video that, yes, I was not for hire, at which point he should have discontinued his investigation. Instead, I was illegally arrested for failure to identify, which is not an arrestable crime. There are court citations, Supreme Court citations backing that up. It's all out there on the net. I was falsely arrested. My identity was stolen because a code enforcer, they are not elected, they are patrolmen. The patrolman went through my wallet, and I don't know what information he took. He could have gotten my credit card numbers. To me, that is identity theft. The officer threatened me with, you do anything I don't say you should do, and I will consider it resisting arrest. Well, I'm standing there with 5 armed thugs. You think I'm going to try and escape? Especially when I've got a pair of handcuffs on that are cutting into my my wrists. You know, they made so many errors. The only thing that saved me in this whole situation is knowledge. I have spent years educating myself on my rights and on what they think they have the right to, but they don't. I am indeed a free man on the land. I did rescind my voter registration. When they asked why, I told them flat out, I refuse to vote in your rigged elections or serve on your corrupted juries. So, and I've written to the Secretary of State of my home state, Louisiana, for acknowledgement of me as a Louisianan. I am not a citizen of the United States, and the biggest thing you have to watch out for is any form that they ask you to fill out that asks you if you are a citizen of the United States. You say no. You emphatically say no. And when you sign, you always sign anything and everything. Everything you sign becomes a financial instrument.
Yep.
And so you sign without recourse, because that, in effect, reserves all your rights. And we've discovered lately you do not use UCC 1-308 because that is buying into their commercial jurisdiction. So that's where I'm at the moment, and I yield.
All right. Well, thank you very much. You know, we've been doing a lot of testing on different things, and one of those things you've probably heard about it is the passport card in particular. And the reason I say that is because that it has just recently come to my awareness here that acts as an international driver's license. So that would take you out of the system or out of the jurisdiction as a United States citizen.
Only if you fill out the form properly.
Well, you do have to fill out the information correctly. You're absolutely right, and that doesn't guarantee anything either, because I don't believe that they sent me the correct one. You know, they took it upon themselves without even asking me any questions to just put me right back into U.S. citizenship, even though all of the documentation was filled out correctly. And now I'm probably going to be requesting a certified copy of the application.
Your best bet always is to, anytime you get paperwork or you create paperwork, always have copies. Always. And if it's notarized, get the notary to give you a copy of it and stamp it a certified copy.
I don't know if you can do that on the passport application. You know, I should have taken a copy of it, and I guess I didn't. I usually keep copies of everything, but I just filled it out correctly and then went in and did it.
And you used all zeros for your Social Security number?
Yeah, they never did ask for it or anything. I didn't get any feedback on it whatsoever, and did everything correctly.
Great.
So.
And you listed yourself and your parents as not United States citizens.
Yep, I sure did.
Good for you. I yield.
No, that's okay. You know, I think that, you know, I'm not the only one that this has happened to. So it's not like an unusual occurrence, I guess. They're known for giving people a rough time on this passport, and for good reason, because I think that really does take you out of the jurisdiction, and now you have a lot more, I guess I would say, standing, you know, because that's what it is. So those are some of the things that, you know, that many of us have been doing, is the passports, authenticating birth certificates. Troy, did you ever do that?
No, I don't have a birth certificate. Somebody else created that. I don't know anything about it.
Okay, all right.
That's not me. On the matter. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I just said I did that.
Yeah, on the matter of, let's say, a passport, here's what people are going to run into. Even if you get what's called a international passport and it's not state or U.S. Washington, D.C. issued, what's going to happen is that there is no such thing as an international passport that's honored in all 253 countries, period. So you can be on your way to, let's say, from here to some other country, or wherever you're at to some other country, and have to stop over for a refueling, for example. But if the jurisdiction that you are in doesn't honor that form of identification, they're going to try and force you into having a contract with them, because it's all about international commercial law. And so a passport, even if it's issued and is good in, let's say, 123 countries, it's only good in 123 countries, and you better hope you're not crossing into the jurisdiction of a country that does not honor that particular form of ID. So for me, what I looked at, and I haven't traveled yet, is as far as where I needed to transcend jurisdictions, or traverse, I should say, jurisdictions, is that I have the information that is needed on a passport I made that is not subject to the rules, regulations, codes, statutes, whatever, of any other artificial person, okay? And it provides the same information that a state or a national ID would provide, which is some personal statistics like my eye color, hair color, height, weight, that kind of thing, as well as contact information. Really, the only purpose of a passport is to have a way to copy that information so that whatever jurisdiction you're within can say, yep, he was here, he passed through, we stamped him, nothing came up in any of the international criminal database or nothing like that, but we know who came through our jurisdiction. So, when you're in that type of a thing and they say, well, we don't accept this kind of passport, well, if they're not going to accept that kind of a passport, chances are they're not going to accept your U.S. passport, because they want you to enter into contract with them so that they have power of attorney over you. So the arguments come down to whether you have a homemade passport or one that's at the state or federal level, the national level. The arguments come down to violations of international law, where you, me, and everybody else on this planet has an unalienable right to travel unless a valid and verifiable charge exists, right? So what you can do, if you're traveling even without any kind of passport at all, and you end up in a situation where you don't have your passport, what you can do is talk to that agent and say, by the way, are you aware that you are in violation of international law, which says that each and every has the unalienable right to travel unless they have committed a crime in some form, like caused injury to another, and there's a valid and verifiable injured party? And that if you interfere with my unalienable right to travel, being as you're in violation of international law, you're not going to be able to get out of this by going to your local circuit court or even your state Supreme Court or even the U.S. Supreme Court, because you're in violation of international law. You'll end up having your happy ass drugged before an international war crimes tribunal for violation of international law. Now, do you want to memorialize your signature onto a form that you want me to prove that I've got some kind of state or national issued ID? Because if you're willing to do that, I'll tell you what, I'll go back and I'll come back in a couple of days, but I'm going to bill you for the flight that you just cost me, as well as time lost for people that are waiting for me on my receiving end. And I'm going to be coming after you later for acting in personage, in fraud, in violation of local, state, federal, and international laws. Now, do you want to go there or do you want to let me go? You have to stand your ground, and I yield.
If I may. Mm-hmm. One of the things
I think there was one person before you that came on a minute ago.
Okay, for the record, my name is Cash. So
Cash.
go ahead, whoever was first.
Okay, was there someone else there that wanted to?
Yes, actually, this is Lori. I'm just letting you know I'm here on the call. That's all that was. So please move forward.
Okay, thanks, Lori.
Sure. Thank you.
Okay, go ahead, sir.
In the process of all of this, I took the opportunity to create my own sovereign information card. And I provided all of the information that a normal ID requires. The picture, the height, the weight, the eye color, my postal code, which I put in properly with zip code exempt and care of and all of that. And then I had it witnessed by two people, and not just witnessed, but thumbprinted by two people. And my signature is not a signature on that. It is an autograph, signed and under seal, all rights reserved. That makes it a non-negotiable document. It is not a signature. Sovereigns do not sign things. Sovereigns autograph. And the hardest part that most people have to learn, and this is one that I've been fighting, but I finally overcame. I've been a stage manager for years and years and years, and I learned how to be in charge. If you are going to be the sovereign, you must learn to act as the sovereign. The sovereign doesn't demand. The sovereign orders. The sovereign is the source of all law. And I create the law of my life, and my life is based on the natural laws of my Creator. I do no harm. I allow no harm to be done. And I honor all of my lawful commitments. If I sign a lawful contract, I follow through. But when Officer Friendly, comes at me from a position of authority, I stand my ground. You are no authority over me. I am the sovereign. I am your boss. If you're a public servant. Now, if you are an employee of a private corporation, an example, Oregon State Police Incorporated, serving as a subsidiary of the Oregon Department of Justice Incorporated, you have no more authority over me than a Walmart rent-a-cop. That's the bottom line. Unless you have a valid and verifiable contract with them, I do not anymore. I let them expire. And they were the ones who came up with the term contract, not me. So once I was informed, I no longer signed on to their contracts. And when they gave me a ticket, I wrote it back to them saying, I do not consent to contract. You do not have to contract with them. And if they force you to sign a ticket, you write things like Vicoactus or 3 dots or TDC for threat, duress, and coercion, because you've got an armed thug there forcing you to sign a contract. Therefore, it's invalid, right? Oregon even has a statute, I think it's 163.125 or 4. I've got it written down, but basically it is coercion and the fines for coercion. When they do that, that's what they're doing, and that immediately voids the contract. And I yield.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry, what was your name?
I'm Stash.
Stash.
I don't have a name, by the way. My real given appellation was a God-given thing my parents bestowed upon me. A name is what the government gives you. That's that thing in all capital letters, or the title Mr., Miss, Ms., Mrs. Those are all state copyrighted titles, and I deny anytime somebody tries to identify me as Mr., I'm not a Mr. I have no title. And when they ask, what's your name? I have no name. I have a God-given appellation, but I'm not required by law to share that with you. So back off. I don't have to identify myself.
Right.
So this is what it means to be the sovereign. You must take charge. You must be in control. You must have no fear and know that you are in the right. I mean, know in your heart that you are right, and you must shut them down. No, you don't have that authority. No. And I never answer their questions. I only ask questions. You know, like when I asked the officer, patrolman, do you understand that I am a lawful traveler and that I am not for hire? And he said, okay, I got that. Well, immediately, this whole case was shot down the tube, and I got it in front of a witness and on video. But you have to take charge, and in order to do that, you have to know what you're talking about. A lot of people use the UCC 1-308, and they go into court, and the judge says, okay, so what does that mean? And they go, whoa, I don't, that's what I was told to sign. That's no longer relevant. If you don't know what it means, you can't use it. You've got to educate yourself to know what you're talking about. And believe me, I've got a law library on my computer that's like 27 or 28 gigabytes of documents that I have been collecting over the years. And they're all related to me and my rights and my freedoms as a human being. From the tribe of man. That's all I am. If you want my real name, it is I am, or man. That's it, as far as they're concerned. And I yield.
If I may.
Thank you. Yes, go ahead, please.
All right. I kind of want to use a metaphor here. I think this will be really helpful for everyone. When we talk about law, whether we're talking about with a capital L, which involves that which is real and living, versus with a small l, and that which is fiction or dead, let's imagine it as a tree with two trunks. One trunk is alive. Okay, it deals with matters that are real in a jurisdiction that is called private. It is known as de jure, and that tree, that living branch, is a jurisdiction called law of the land. So when we talk about that particular trunk, let's say that there's 4 branches on it. One of those branches is what we'll call universal law, and those are laws of God or our Creator and the universe. Another branch, second one, is natural law, which involves the laws of nature. The third one is common law, and this relates to private, not public. And common law states that you can cause no harm, loss, or fraud to any other living souls. Then you have the fourth branch, which is constitutional law. And constitutional law comes down to the matter of all holders of any public oath of office are and must serve the private people. Okay, on the other branch, we have a trunk, dead trunk. That trunk has de facto status instead of de jure. It handles matters of legal versus lawful. It is also fictions versus that which is real, and it operates within the public realm. It is truly dead. It is called jurisdiction of law of the sea, and it also has 4 branches. One branch is called commercial law, which deals with contract law, merchant law, which is called lex mercatoris, which, by the way, has been rendered unlawful in this country since our Declaration of Independence, away from that form of law. And UCC also falls under commercial law. The second branch is Admiralty Maritime. That deals with military codes, tribunals, and martial law. And then you have statutory legislation as a third branch. That deals with matters involving the public. So that would include statutory acts, bills, codes, rules, regulations, ordinances, and legislative instruments in general. And then finally, the fourth branch is that of the corporation. The corporations deal with legal persons, which are in fact dead and fictitious in nature. It also deals with franchises, decedents, debtors, and wards of the state. So if we're going to play in this world, and we want to be operating, let's call it, in the de facto, the law of the sea jurisdiction, versus functioning under law, we we have to be careful which tree branch or trunk we're climbing, because you can't be in the tree branch of the living while you're climbing in the tree of the dead, right? And what we're missing in this country right now is that all of the land has been sunk by statutes, codes, rules, regulations, and ordinances. We are actually under Admiralty Maritime and military law due to things like the War Powers Act and these other types of acts, which again are fictions that have superseded our law of the land jurisdiction. So I hope that defining this kind of as a metaphor helps with determining that which is real versus that which is fiction, because that is critical in how we can move forward either in personage or as a natural living man, woman, and or child. And I yield.
All right. Anybody have any questions for Troy on that? I guess you just threw everybody off there.
I'm so sorry. It was, it was
no, that was really good. That was really
Thank
good.
you.
Thank you.
Most welcome.
If
good information.
If I may.
Please.
The thing that we're facing here is that the de facto has had 200 years to create a social paradigm. And a lot of the things we take for granted aren't real. They just are not affecting us. Remember, the de facto only deals with fictitious corporations. That's why they created your straw man and your Seth KV trust, that they presume you're dead from birth and that you're a fiction. You don't exist. And the whole idea is that we have to step out of that role and throw out all of our education. We have to unlearn 99% of what we know or we think we know about the law, because it isn't law after all. We have to throw that out and learn what we really need to know, who we really are. And I think this throws a lot of people off. Mark Twain said once, it's easier to fool people than it is to convince them that they've been fooled. And you follow that up with Thomas Jefferson, who said, the price of freedom is eternal vigilance. You have to be on your guard. You have to know. And it is your job to know, because they tell you ignorance of the law is no excuse, but you're the only one who's going to be able to take care of that. I mean, nobody else is looking out for you in this life in that sense. You must grab the bull by the tail, look the problem straight in the eye, and plug it up. And say, no, I'm not going to do this. And then you get to the point, like the movie Network, where you say, I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore. I think many people on this call are probably in that position already. They're mad as hell because they're being just raped by this fictitious corporate government that doesn't really have anything to do with you or me. It is them getting money from you any and every way they can, and that's all there is to it. It's all about money. Not the law, not freedom, not justice, but money. And I yield.
All right, thank you. Which, that kind of segues, if I may here, into, see, on one hand, I see where we have a job to do in educating, as many as we come into contact with on the de facto side. And that can be really tricky because we've already been painted, they've already been trained to see us as delusional or mentally ill or conspiracy theorists or whatever. And that's kind of the opposite of what we're out to accomplish here. from where I'm coming from, because I don't want to be presumed to be an enemy combatant or any of those things, dead, lost at sea, and incompetent, ward of the state, etc., which is where the contract thing, comes in here as something that we really need to comprehend, because they will always look for a way to contract with you, and we don't always recognize what those contracts are. So consenting is a contract. So if you consent to something, then you're making a contract. Now, many of us face situations where we're put under duress, and then you have to sign something, which then seems like consent, which is where I'm in total agreement. You've got to take care of yourself with those autographs that you put down. And, I personally, I use the one UCC 1-308, and without prejudice. And one of the things that I know that does is it prevents them from turning it into a commercial instrument. It halts it. Otherwise, once they have your signature on anything, that becomes a commercial instrument, and they're able to make a lot of money off of it. So, if you do have to sign something, comprehend, first of all, that they're taking that as consent when you do that. So make sure you cover your tracks in marking down what you feel comfortable with, whether it's without recourse, without prejudice, and however you're comfortable signing it or autographing. Just make sure that you take care of yourself. And with that, I'll yield here, and if somebody else wants to.
If I may, just a counterpoint.
Certainly.
First, we don't need to educate the de facto. We need to remove them. What we need to do is educate ourselves on how to do that. And Troy and I have talked about this recently, that citing UCC 1-308 immediately puts you in their world. You are using their tools and their regulations, and saying that, I buy into the UCC and what it says, where the UCC really has no relevance to you as a human being. So,
well, okay, I would I would tend to question that, because the UCC is what is used for international contracts. So when you're getting into consent and contracts and commercial instruments, which is what we're talking about, it's all about money. Then I don't see it as something that is putting myself into the system as much as I do. I see that as their Bible that they have to abide by. It's where the international law comes into play.
If I may. I know we had another caller that wanted to speak, and I'd like to let them go, but I want to elaborate further on this concept of commercial contract law after this gentleman's done. So thank you.
Certainly, I yield. And I know we had somebody else there that was trying to speak. Go ahead, please.
Yes, this is Roger in Florida again. A question for Troy. Troy, do we understand at all yet what happens when a people dies? What happens to the Sestakui V trust account?
It is confiscated by the state. Okay, the state is the one that created the initial contract, which is called the Certificate of Live Birth. They sent notice to Washington, D.C., and Washington, D.C. creates a birth certificate, and another bond is issued on the birth certificate as well as the one that was issued at the Certificate of Live Birth. So that's the state's claim of ownership on you, the body. The feds claim right or access to any and all property. And then, of course, if you're ever baptized, you have actually done yet another contract that puts you into the jurisdiction of the Vatican, the Roman Curia, which, by the way, anything and everything that is legal is under Roman Curia law. That includes UCC and any and all of that commercial law that I was talking about on the dead trunk of the tree that we do not want to be acting in any way, which is why I was Stash was saying that you don't want to play the UCC1 game, because the minute you do that, you're admitting that you're hanging out in the dead branch or the dead trunk, playing in the branches of commercial law, which is one of those 4 branches I'd mentioned before. So what's happening is that we are worth more dead than we are alive to these de facto people. And that is the danger of playing at all on that trunk that involves merchant law, commercial law, contract law, military, admiralty, maritime jurisdiction. That whole realm is fiction. And if we want to be free as men and women upon the land, we have to leave the swimming pool, because the water wings they're giving us, as it were, for our flotation devices are subject to puncture because of the nature of the legal system. I'll give you an example. If you're playing in the pool of admiralty maritime jurisdiction, the problem is that these are creations of legal fictions that are supported by employees of those incorporated entities. And the problem is that when you get into their administrative courts of equity, the rules are subject to change at a whim. So how can you be bound to honor and uphold what they call the law when you can't even use it against them? Because if they don't like what you're doing, since they're the creator of that fiction, they have the right to make it malleable and change the rules on you. So, we've had a lot of folks over the years that I've been helping with things like filing your fieri facias de bonus ecclesiasticus to the local county bishop so that you can be removed from sole ownership by the church, as well as other things like getting your authenticated birth certificate at the state level and the federal level. Yes, you can get permission from these people or acknowledgement that you are standing as a man upon the land, but in a sense, you still have to sign forms that they are the creators of. That gives them the copyright to that intellectual property, and anytime you sign your signature on their forms, they are claiming power of attorney over you as a legal fiction. That's the problem we're facing. So we have to decide we're going to live in the trunk of the living or play in the trunk of the dead, which is why I haven't bothered with doing all of these de facto processes, because I'm still playing, I'm sitting at their monopoly table, basically. Mm-hmm. And as long as I'm sitting and playing in that realm of the sea, I can't get on land, because they have a million ways to sink my sorry butt.
Yep.
I yield.
So let me, to follow up on my question, I'm particularly concerned about veterans who have done their military service, say they've retired after 20 years. We know that the U.S. military is a corporation, and these individuals now look like a serious liability to that corporation. The liability includes the pension payments. The liability includes the medical care that they're supposed to get. And it just struck me the other day that maybe there's some other benefit in it for these folks to die that the state would collect relative to their Sestakui V trust.
Well, I can tell you this much about our service people. They have more power of attorney and jurisdiction and authority than any judge on the land, period, because they have actually signed an oath to honor and uphold and protect the Constitution and the people, right? Whereas judges have signed an oath to a legal fiction that doesn't even exist except as an ideology.
Good point. But so as an example, is it possible that we could somehow figure out a way to put a claim against the entity within the state that may have collected against a Sestakui V trust of an dead serviceman or woman?
Okay, Here's how it goes. The author or the creator of the creation does have, will have, and will always have jurisdiction and power of attorney of that creation. That's the danger of the legal system. There's not any one man you can point a finger to and say, hey, wait a minute, you wrote something in the legislation, like, for example, here in Oregon, that you can't buy, sell, or eat ice cream on a Sunday, which is actually a law on the books. It's called a blue law here in Oregon. And who gave that guy the authority to pass that through legislation? That wasn't approved for and by the people, right? It's a code. Yep. And the code has no bearing in reality. It's literally a fiction. So when they come to you and say, hey, listen, you're not supposed to be buying, selling, or eating ice cream on a Sunday, you have to stand up and say, by what authority? You always have to challenge jurisdiction. And when you realize that the jurisdiction is something that is granted, not something that is presumed or assumed, and they always assume and presume that they have jurisdiction, but you have to challenge that jurisdiction at every turn and remind them that they are acting in personage, and personage is an act of fraud, and fraud vitiates all. Does that make sense?
Yep. Well, I got all that, but how does that apply to figuring out where would we go in the state to...
Right. So here's right. So in answer to your question on the Sestui KV Trust, you and I did not create that trust upon the reception of the birth certificate. We have never controlled it. Most of us don't even know that that exists, and we never will control it because it doesn't really exist except as numbers in cyberspace, let's call it. There's really no real value backing those commercial transactions. And that is the danger of operating within the jurisdiction of international commercial law. What we want to do is not honor international commercial law in any way, shape, or form and control that which we truly create. So the best thing we could do as people is say, well, I know I got this thing called the Sestui KV Trust that the state or the government created on our behalf, and they've been using it to their advantage all of this time because they never even bothered telling us that we're engaged in an invalid contract because you can't enter into contract with a minor. And these contracts and bonds were issued pretty much before we were even our first month old. Right? Yep. They're all null and void. And so the money doesn't exist. I'd like to think that, yeah, I've got $600 million or whatever in value since I was born back in the early 60s. But the truth of the matter is the money never existed. It certainly didn't exist under law. There is no true value backing it except me, the man. But they're trying to make me the debtor by forcing me through coercion, intimidation, and fear tactics, if not forcibly, to admit that I am that guy they created so that they can reassign themselves from a trustee status to authorized representative and beneficiary status and make me the trustee or the surety, the liable party for any and all debts. And in the meantime, they've been spending money hand over fist for the last 50-something years on using my name, and everything about it is fraud. So I can't go for that. What I can do is start functioning, not operating, within the jurisdiction known as international trade law. International trade law deals with real living people, not artificial persons or incorporated entities. So we kind of have to rethink how we think about money and economy and commerce and go, wait a minute, all of that is a fiction. The money's a fiction. The people that control it are operating as a fiction, as agents. The body itself, whether it be the Federal Reserve or the Bank of whatever, are all fictions. And they have no bearing in the real world unless we give them power through our consent, even if that consent was given through coercion and force. They can't do anything to you if you haven't given them your date of birth, your full given name, and your Social Security information. They have no way to access that trust account, that Sestui KV Trust, period. They don't. And that's why they try to induce you into signing a contract and saying, well, we're going to keep you in jail until you sign here, and then you're going, God, I just want to get out of here. Let me sign here. And as soon as you sign here, everything that they've done against you has standing in their form of law.
Mm-hmm.
Which is actually in violation
Florida,
of maxims of law. And I yield.
In Florida, we have approximately 5,000 vets in jail or prison, approximately 4,000 with no injured party. And I'm afraid that we have an incentive, of course, with the for-profit, privately owned corporate courts and for-profit, privately owned prisons to do this. But I'm also worried about the incentive that may be buried in there for someone to harvest that SWV trust account. And on that account, I'm trying to figure out how to remedy that so that that incentive is taken away.
The best way that I can suggest to do that is to put everyone on notice that you are rescinding any and all authorities that bear your name in any and every form.
Okay. Got it.
If I may.
Very good. I yield. Thank you.
If I may, another thing that you can do, and let me think this because I kind of lost my train of thought, but oh God, I'm sorry, I just had a brain fart, and I'm getting kind of old, you know. But as a veteran, and I am a veteran, remember that those guys who were in jail, no matter when they were convicted, you always have the right to go back and challenge the jurisdiction of the court and take it to a court of appeals, a higher court. So there's no statute of limitations on that, and you can always get those decisions overturned. It's just knowing the right questions to ask and the right things to tell them. And, you know, again, rescinding all contracts. Mistakes and misinformation are legitimate grounds for canceling a contract, as well as lack of full disclosure. They never give you full disclosure on anything. When you sign a driver's license, they don't tell you you're giving up your human rights for civil rights and becoming a citizen of the United States. When you register to vote, they don't tell you that you're becoming a corporate citizen of the United States Incorporated. You have to know these things, that where their contracts lie and how you can rescind your IRS contract, any signature you ever signed due to fraud and misinformation and lack of full disclosure. Same thing with a driver's license, with vehicle registration, with any court decision, because they're all administrative courts acting in commerce. They are not acting in law. So you have the right to cancel those contracts. And besides which, they handed you a fraudulent contract, which was null and void ab initio from the get. They never had control over you because they never gave you the full details as outlined in the Four Corners Doctrine of contracting. And they never give you just compensation. I registered my car. All of a sudden, they took legal title and declared it a commercial vehicle, number one, without informing me. Number two, assuming and presuming that I am a driver, which is an operator of a commercial motor vehicle. They never maintained it, they never fueled it, and they never paid me to drive. So they were in breach of contract from day one. And this is what you have to know. You can get out of these things just by a simple letter saying, I rescind my signature. I end the contract due to fraud. And as Troy said, fraud vitiates everything. I yield.
Have you ever tried enforcing that? I mean, have you ever been in a situation where you've been able to use that and get remedy?
I am in the process right now. I sent an affidavit and order to the court clerk, circuit court clerk, and I'm waiting to see what happens. My supposed trial date is tomorrow, but I have already made my appearance through my affidavit. and I required the bonding information and ID numbers of all of their employees, including the district attorney, court clerk, any judge they might assign, and their oaths. And they have 10 days, basically, to respond. And, of course, they can't respond. So the next step, of course, is to send them a default notice and giving them a chance to reestablish themselves in honor and honor my affidavit in order. Should that fail, I send them a third notice saying, you are in violation, I'm proceeding forward, and I file a criminal complaint followed by a commercial lien against each and every one of them and their bonding companies. And the bonding companies, as Troy informed me this morning, is who we really need to have to go after because they have so many days to resolve the issue or they have to pay it. And you know these bonding companies don't want to let go of their money any more than the feds do. So they either take action, or a commercial lien goes against each and every one of them. And that is the place, of course, where we will have enforcement issues. That's where we need the de jure marshals, jurors, judges, and such. But still, once a lien is filed against any commercial operation, any corporation, there is immediate estoppel on them doing any further business. There is a perfected lien out right now that has gone through public notice and the whole process against the American Bar Association, the International Bar Association, and the United States Department of Justice. It's like a $43 trillion lien. It has been perfected. Effectively, they're out of business. They are operating in their own rules illegally. So, I cited that in my affidavit, too. I think Troy will correct me, but I think it's SEC number 6400220.
That would be incorrect.
Okay. Well, anyway, I got it correct in my affidavit.
You did, absolutely.
But give them that number because that's really relevant.
Sure. For anyone that is unaware of the commercial lien that was filed against both actually all three of the American Bar Association, the International Bar, as well as the U.S. Department of Justice, that Security Exchange Commission number that you'll want to type into your search engine is SEC number 2640220. What that lien that those three aforementioned entities are now in default in is to the tune of not $43 trillion, but $279 trillion. And the fact of the matter is that any incorporated entity and the agents thereof cannot engage in commerce while currently under investigation for fraud. So any court operating today with these de facto people, each and every one of those, in theory, if we had enough continental marshals, de jure people, to handle it, could go in and arrest anyone and everyone operating in a court of equity on the land in America. So I'd encourage everybody to read that 43 or 44-page document. It's one of the most perfect legal and lawful instruments I've ever read. I mean, it's totally up there for me with the original organic Constitution. Yeah, fact of the matter is, everything happening right now in our courts is fraud. And I yield.
All right, thank you. Would you give us that number again?
Yeah, that number is S like Scott, Eric, Chris, SEC number 2640220. And for those who are not aware, that lien is available at a website called AnnavonRights.com, as well as in other portals, let's call them. So that information has been distributed, and it's actually being used in other countries. It's not working too well at the moment in America, but other countries have referred to that SEC number in their cases, and it has shut down any and all efforts by the de facto to engage in commercial fraud. And I yield.
Thank you. There's been talk about our political prisoners that were taken from Colorado, that is the clincher. The commercial lien is part of what it is that they're really wanting to go after people that are doing those commercial liens, I guess is what I've been picking up on. And I know that means they're working. Right, but unfortunately, our people that are sitting in jail right now are probably not feeling real.
There are, and I can say this in all candor, that the 8 people from Colorado who are currently in jail didn't have all of the information that they needed to be able to operate completely and entirely under law of the land jurisdiction. They were playing that game sitting in the pool or at the table of the de facto. And that's going to bite you in the butt every time, because as soon as you try and do something that you think is legal and lawful, all they got to do is change their policies. But if you're in their jurisdiction, guess what? They just changed the rules on you, and you didn't even know that. So you're nescient to it. You know what I mean? You have no knowledge of that. It's funny when you ask an average cop that pulls you over, what is the source of your authority? There's only one right answer to that, and that is their oath. And there's probably not a law enforcer out there that knows that is the correct answer to that question, right? And if they do have an oath, and they do answer it correctly, well, ask them to recite their oath. If they can't recite their oath, how can they hold you to something which they are unfamiliar with, right? There goes their jurisdiction. Not to mention, in most cases, they don't have either one of two things: a court order process, like a summons, a subpoena, or warrant, or we're not eyewitness to you in the commission of injury to another and or their property. So they don't get any jurisdiction. Sorry, you have no authority here, right? And unless you can prove jurisdiction, you don't have authority. And without a claim or a complaint that exists in fact, you have no jurisdiction. Therefore, how can you have any authority? Have a nice day. Thank you very much. You're wasting both of our time because there's no commerce here.
Gotcha. Well, yeah, I was, interesting. Okay, anybody got any questions here? Anybody?
If I may.
Sure, go ahead.
This is Captain Kevin. If the gentleman wouldn't mind elaborating on what he thinks were the issues of the 8 in Colorado, how they could have been not completely on the land, and I yield.
Okay, well, the first thing that happened that I would imagine, and this is just, I don't know this for a fact, is that they were charged. And they did not clearly state that as real living men and or women who are under oath to honor and uphold the law, not the law of the sea, but the law of the land, for the Constitution and the Bill of Rights and the Declaration of Independence. If they didn't properly identify themselves and hold their ground in not signing anything that those de facto people put in front of them. And I know that the pressure is great. They end up in jail and they end up telling you need to sign here if you're going to ever get out of here again. And the problem is that they never get out of there again. The minute you sign their paperwork, you have, in effect, given them power of attorney. And once you have forfeited a right that you are not clear that you have, you'll most likely never get that right back. Does that make sense?
Yeah, makes sense to me, for sure.
And so I don't really know the details of each of the individuals. I know some stuff that went on was questionable. For example, I understand that one or some of the justices were recruiting marshals. Well, that's not the role of a justice. Okay, I know this. I, too, am basically on hold as a justice. But I have to be not only registered publicly but also privately, and right now I can't get registered privately because it's de facto. And the de facto do not want to be subject to the law of the land and the Constitution at all. because they know I'll be coming after them for violations against unalienable human rights, because they're all in violation of local, state, federal, and international law. So for me to get legitimate, I have to be able to have a pool of jurors that know who they are, that are in the de jure, that have oaths on record both privately and publicly, as well as marshals that are de jure, and justices, so that we have some kind of solidarity, let's call it, in the de jure realm of things. True enforcers of the law of the land jurisdiction, without regard at all for any instrument at all that could be deemed legal, like a code, rule, regulation, ordinance, statute, what have you, unless a valid and verifiable contract exists. And even in those instances where a contract is produced, you can always challenge the validity of the contract, because it has to stand under four corners doctrine. And that means that every contract must have full disclosure completely expressed in the contract. That means it also has to be mutually acceptable and therefore mutually beneficial. The third tenet of contract law is that everything must be legal. I can't say, hey, I want to hire you to put out a contract hit on somebody because I don't like the guy. That wouldn't be obviously legal. So if it doesn't got those three tenets plus the fourth one, which is the valid and verifiable wet signatures of both parties or all parties involved within that contract and witnessed, whether that's by a notary or two or three other witnesses. All that stuff has to happen for a contract to be valid. So if any one of those four aspects of a contract has a defect, it's no. Contract is unenforceable. I yield.
I think that four of our people in Colorado that were taken, four of them ended up bailing out. So we know they contracted. Now, one of them was under extreme duress because their spouse was having health issues or something to that effect. And then the four that are in there, I don't think that they have contracted with a signature or anything like that. I know they have not taken an attorney. So at least I think all four of them have reserved their right to their own counsel. So that's kind of what's going on there. Now, I question, like, if you have a driver's license or you're carrying insurance on your vehicle or you registered it, then I tend to think that those are still valid contracts then, and that does put you back in the de facto or keeps you in the de facto.
I would challenge that. I'm sorry, I spoke over somebody else. Go ahead, whoever was speaking.
No, I was just saying, no, those are not valid contracts. When you sign the registration form, you do not get a wet ink signature from the agent, and you do not get a copy of the contract, plus they do not give you full disclosure. It is fraud. Same thing with a driver's license contract. Yes, it is a contract.
Well, I do agree with you on that they're fraud, and which is precisely why if you're in what we're doing and we comprehend that those are fraudulent, then what in the world are we doing going and getting our license renewed or, registering your vehicle? What are you doing that for then? If you know that it's fraudulent.
Question. Why do you do that? Why do you do that? That's the $64,000 question. Why do you keep buying into the game? Stop playing the game. They have no recourse. If you're
and that's what I was saying, is that I think that when you do that, well, you are consenting, especially if you do know that it's all done in fraud. And if you're still doing it because you think that it's the best way to protect yourself and to keep from getting pulled over and hauled off, which I get that. That's a real concern for all of us whenever we have to go out and travel. We don't know who we're going to run into with the de facto. And if we do, then got to be prepared. Personally, the passport card makes sense to me, but that's me. That's something that everybody, has to make their own decision as to whether or not that's buying back in to the de facto. I personally don't see it that way because I'm more focused on the international law, and I know that the UCC is what is the rule book for it. And I yield.
That would be correct in international commercial jurisdiction. But again, we don't want to be playing, if we're going to be real people, we don't want to be playing in international commercial jurisdiction at all. We want to be functioning within international trade. Does that make sense?
It does. However, I have taken the steps to make myself, I've documented that I am the holder in due course. I'm the attorney, in fact. I'm the secured party creditor, the bailer, the grantor, and I've taken all of those away from the de facto.
Excellent.
So they are safely in my keeping now, and now I know that I've got the documentation to back up to get messed with. I have those documents. They're witnessed, they're signed. They're witnessed, they're autographed, and some stuff is notarized. And I took a lot of time doing that. And personally, I feel very good about it. I think that it was an important step.
Indeed. Here's the problem that people see. The de facto is getting hip on this what we're doing here, and so what they're starting to do is deny. For example, the 8 individuals in Colorado that are being incarcerated at this time, what they're doing is they're countercharging those 8 people with paper terrorism. Okay?
Oh, I saw that. Yep, paper terrorism.
Now, here's the thing about that. It'll never stick because if they passed that as case law, that would equate to paper terrorism, well, guess what? That means anybody ever sending you a bill with threat, like, hey, if you don't pay the power bill for $100 this month, we're going to shut your power off, that would be considered paper terrorism. So this paper terrorism charge against these 8 individuals in Colorado will not stick, and that is the primary charge that they have against the 8 individuals.
And I think that was where the commercial lien came in, isn't it?
Well, the commercial lien was a result of the fact that this country went bankrupt for the last time in March of 1999. And since then, there is nothing legitimate about the legal system at all. They are literally changing their policies behind the bench. They are literally making up laws. Judges are. That is not due legislative process. And it certainly isn't authorization by the true government, which is we the people, right? And so, I'm telling you, we got a mess to clean up here, but what we need to start doing is saying no. Period. That's it.
I concur. I do concur with you. I think that one thing that many people can do, which is going to put most people out of their comfort zone, by all means, and maybe not everybody can do it, but a lot of people could, is start exercising your right to travel, and let's get that straightened out.
Indeed.
No longer an issue.
Here's the thing, anytime a charge is made against you or me or anybody else, that charge, if indeed there is no injured party, absolutely must have a countercharge. Because the accuser has the onus of proof. And without that, they have no jurisdiction, and they certainly, without jurisdiction, have no authority. So that's why it's always important to question jurisdiction when a charge is leveled against you, whether it's from the city cop or whether it's from the state police or whether it's from the county courthouse, right? And once jurisdiction is challenged, the onus is on the accuser to prove jurisdiction and therefore authority. Does that make sense?
It does make sense, and I know that that's true. It's been a big part of, of many of our studies, the jurisdiction thing and the court of records and learning how to do all of that too. which I think is really important. In what I get concerned about, though, is that I've done that. I have challenged jurisdiction and had the judge just run right over me and never did prove jurisdiction. Just,
Right,
which
and
then
so
I'll go back to
what really happened there was that this personage was violating maxims of the law. There's no such thing as a legal instrument that cannot be challenged for violating a maxim of law. And there's a lot of them. And the funny thing about maxims of law is that they were formally introduced to the Congress and the Senate back in 1856 by Bouvier. Okay? All of those laws passed. So anything that's happened since 1856 that can be considered a legal instrument that's trying to be enforced under color of law can be challenged because they are all illegitimate and unlawful because they violate maxims of law.
If I may,
Please.
one quick thought here. You had said that the United States went bankrupt back. Actually, the United States just went through its either fourth or fifth bankruptcy about 3 or 4 days ago. Our government, quote unquote, is in bankruptcy right now, and I believe China is the executor of the bankruptcy. So they're more than just the SEC notice. They are lawfully bankrupt. They have no money. They have no power. The corporation is, by all rights, should be dissolved. And
in truth, if I may, March 9th of 1933 was officially the United States of America Incorporated default. And that's why House Joint Resolution number 192 came into being that said any and all debts that exist within the private are prepaid in full.
And I use that too. Now the reality is actually it's been foreclosed so many times and bankrupt so many times. 1999 wasn't the last time. There's been 2 more since then where, the OPPT, that's what that was all about. And I saw those filings, and I saw all the documentation on that. They've done something really interesting since then with the UCC. They couldn't take away those filings because that is their Bible. So they did something really strange, like mirrored the site, so that you can't see those those filings from that unless you have the old ones or something. It's really strange. But then even since then, it's been foreclosed again, and then I read that or I heard something about the bankruptcy that was taking place in the last week or so.
Yes.
Yeah, that's really...
Well, if I may, on the matter of OPPT, it's important to note that all of the UCC1 filings they did on behalf of all people was still done through a private incorporated entity, which still means that all that took place in the realm of fiction, law of the sea jurisdiction. So what validity it has is dependent on the individual and their perception of what really happened there. But to me, it was all fraud. You can't have an incorporated entity represent we the people because it's a fiction. And you can't empower a team of people to act in personage to form a company that is also a fiction, just like the personage is, and make that kind of a lawful claim. Because it wasn't done through due process under law, operation of law, if that makes sense.
You're talking about the foreclosure that the OPP did?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not. I guess I never thought of the OPPT as like a company.
Well, they were. They were, and they folded, and they had no lawful authority to file UCC1 filings on behalf of every person because those filings exist ab initio in fraud, because they're all based on contracts that were entered into with a minor, an infant no less, which is why when we get into these courts of equity, they treat us like we have to produce our ID, which is basically an acronym for infant decedent, which is why they tell you you can't speak in these courts unless you're representing yourself in personam propria or sui juris without legal counsel. And it's that legal counsel that people rely on to help get them through the system. And the truth of the matter is, anything and everything legal is in service to a private incorporated entity that has no bearings in law at all except under contract.
If I may also, the bankruptcies and the way they get around them, of course, is they reincorporate under a different name. So it used to be the United States of America, then it became the United States, then it, they changed the name to protect the guilty. It's that simple. And with that, I yield.
Very true. That is how they do it, too. They just changed the name. So I wonder what the new name's going to be this time.
They're trying to use the Republic of the United States based out of a corporation in France.
Oh. Okay, then. I do laugh about all of that. Severing that jurisdiction is the biggest thing that I'm concerned about, is removing any presumption. So when I'm going about my business and I'm doing what I'm doing, I don't see myself as playing in their arenas, but by all means, we'll use the laws and whatnot that were put in place for our remedy, because I haven't found another way. I can challenge jurisdiction, I can do multiple things, and, I am just turned a deaf ear. So I don't get any attention that way, and don't get any resolve that way myself.
Right.
So,
and you know the reason for that, right? Because you're dealing with dead entities. You're dealing with non-living, what are called legal fictions. And you can't, let's say McDonald's beats you up, you can't go beat McDonald's up to get them back. It's a fiction. It's an ideology. It's comprised of policies and the enforcement of those policies by agents of that agency. And that's why it's important to not play the game of the artificial person that is a collective of individuals that are on mission to honor and uphold their policies, because you can take any incorporated entity out there and look at their policies and point out how this one and that one and the other one and all of these other policies are in violations of maxims of law. It's all fraud. That's why when we're injured...
Somehow, you know what, though, Troy? Here's the thing. When I challenged jurisdiction, which was more than once, by the way, I don't think that if I then stepped up to the plate and said, all right, well, that didn't work, so I'm going to use maxims of law now, I don't think that I'm going to get any more focus or attention, myself. I mean, and I'm amongst other people who have done the same kind of things and not seen any resolve. Right. So, I don't know why a judge or an alleged judge would pay more attention to, one verbiage over another. We're dead to them. They don't hear us.
That is why we never step into their courts of equity, which are not courts of law and which are not courts of record, as a man or a woman. Because the minute we do that, we have admitted to their authority just by setting foot on their pirate ship.
Yeah, it's a little bit difficult, though, when they're stealing your kids and things like that, to say, I'm not going to court. You know what I mean? I'm not going to go.
Agreed.
And I played that game.
But the way that the king or the queen of the land handles those types of matters is through non-judicial process. The true man or woman does not plea. does not petition, does not ask or request. The true man or king or queen upon the land orders. Everything is done through affidavit or notice or order. And that is done through non-judicial process, because the minute you set foot in their building, you're on their ship.
If I may.
Yeah, please.
The actual culmination of this, of course, is that if you decide to go to court, you file a notice of special appearance and you never cross the bar. That is when you step on their ship and they are in control. You never cross the bar, and any time a judge denies your challenge of their jurisdiction, you only have 2 words to say from then on: I object, I object, I object. And ask him, are you legislating from the bench?
Absolutely.
Which is a major crime. They are not allowed to legislate from the bench and create law from the bench. They are required to follow the law. So you object and ask them, and if they continue to, and from then on, anything they say, I object, I object, I object to the continuation of this proceeding, I object, and I do not consent to your authority. You know, those are the 6 most powerful words I know. 1, I object. Number 2, I do not consent. Without consent, in any way, shape, or form, they are powerless. And I yield.
If I may, I have an important question for everybody on this call to think about. When you do enter into their courts, whether it's under special appearance or otherwise, who is the trustee when your name is called? That's something that's really important to know, because right now there's 2 of you in that courtroom. There's you, the man or the woman, standing there under special appearance or what have you, and there's the trustee of that legal entity, that legal fiction. And guess who that is? That's the prosecutor. So when they call out your name, you can, if you've dared to go into their boat, you can say, by the way, I'm here, I am Troy the man under special appearance, and I want the trustee, the named trustee of the individual that represents that legal fiction. Guess who that is? That's the DA. At that point, you can order and demand of the court for the record, even if they're not going to keep records, because they don't. They're courts of equity, not courts of record. That puts all of the onus on the guy who's actually trying to milk your Sestweed KB trust account. He's acting as the trustee, and he's working in collusion with the state, the court administrator, let's call him, because he's not a judge. He's a court administrator. He's a magistrate. He's working in collusion with them and the lawyer, and all of them are bar members, and they're all a part of a boys' club called the National Lawyers Guild. And there's actually a DUNS number for that particular entity, which proves they have no governmental authority because they're acting in private as a incorporated entity. So when you can put the onus on the DA as the trustee of that personage, guess who gets to pay all of the bills and fines and fees? The prosecutor.
And the other side of that, of course, is when you absolutely demand the bid and performance bonds. And if they can't produce those, they have no case.
That is correct. They have to produce the bid bond and the performance bond before any jurisdiction is awarded to any operator of the Court of Equity.
And you can also demand their indemnity bond number that they have to have in case they do injury to you. If they have no bond, they have no corporation. It's another maxim of law.
If I may.
Please.
One of the things that were a big part of the case for the 8 that are in jail is the notice of fraud is because there are no bonded fictions in the court in Colorado. They are all self-insuring. I was actually involved in researching some of the judges and prosecutors and of the dozen that I researched, only one actually had a bond, and that was because it was an insurance company, like Fidelity Mutual Insurance, writing a bond. So the thing in Colorado is there are no bonds. They're all self-insuring or using insurance companies. And my other comment is instead of trying to fight in their court of equity, why wouldn't you just automatically file a common law claim to take the jurisdiction out of their court and into a court of record? And I yield.
If I may answer that, you absolutely would want to do that. But at the moment, we need more people who are qualified de jure jurors. We need marshals that can perform that can perform the enforcement. And the only way they can do that is to be eyewitness or to have a court process document. And that has to be issued by a de jure official in the de jure realm. And so here's where we're at. We don't have any common law courts in America right now. But you know what? What is a court? A court isn't a building at a specific location at a specific address. A court is a courtship. So if we could get enough people that were educated in law of the land, the universal, natural, common, and constitutional law, then we could act as basically a posse. And we could go with our 25 people and basically begin investigations, drop the complaints ourselves against these frauds, and then once we've done our investigations, do a presentment before a proper, lawful grand jury in that case, so that an indictment can be formed. Once the indictment has been issued, we now have a court-ordered process that is issued by a de jure law of the land jurisdiction justice of the peace, and now we can pass that on to a petit jury so that we can determine what the distressment or distrainment remedy is going to be, or care and maintenance is going to be. But we don't have the people behind what we're trying to do, and it's we the people who are the true form of government, but most people are completely nescient to their rights, let alone the law, let alone the difference between that which is lawful and that which is legal. So it's a matter of education, but it's not a matter of educating the de facto people. It's a matter of educating people who will not and do not wish to act in personage so that they can act in enforcement of true, real law that relates to real people. And I yield.
All right. Thank you, Troy. Yes, we do need people, but we're actually I think that we've got a lot of people, and there is I believe a common law grand jury that is assembling now on a national level. It's definitely important for everybody to work on assembling in your own local areas and getting those places filled. However, based on what I'm getting from our meetings, is that we can set this up on a national level and do cases. And with that, I yield and open the floor for feedback.
I'd like
Roger Dabell.
I'd like to make one other point on the power of a common law grand jury. When a man or a woman is acting under common law on a jury, they have the power of 1,200 people. That's called the 12th Hindi. Okay? So you've got a grand jury of, let's say, 25 people. That's 25 times 1,200. So you've got, 34,000? The power of 34,000 people in those judgments? Does that make sense? Hello?
Oops, sorry. That sounds great. I've never heard that before, so that's, fascinating what you're talking about now. But I do know that the 25 is, definitely the minimum number in some cases, I think I've heard that there's 27 members to a grand jury. So, really, I did a practice run on this kind of a few years ago, with a group on a national level where we were putting together a grand jury to try specific cases, all lawfully done and everything. And actually, it works really well because we're evolving, whether we recognize that or not. I think most people do. We're evolving with the electronics in the computers. We can do more now than we were able to do before, and we can reach out on these levels and get a lot more cohesiveness. So I would say never downplay, the tools that we have available to us now in order to get things done. My question would be, there's been controversy as to whether or not a national grand jury is a lawful assembly, and I'm not as familiar with the laws and the history that backs that up. So maybe, Troy, can you answer that question?
Yes, I believe I can. I wanted to point out that, you are absolutely correct with the grand jury being 25 people, and in the case of a 27 people grand jury, that's what's called a supreme grand jury, okay? And those are usually put together in matters that are crimes of the most egregious order, where there's question as to what's the proper way to proceed in providing restitution to the victim as well as penance for the perpetrator or perpetrators. And with a petit jury, under the constitutional law of the land jurisdiction, that is supposed to be 15 people, 14 jurors and one jury administrator. Okay, so I'm sorry, what was that original question I wanted to get to? I'm sorry, I kind of got lost there for a second.
The question was, okay, I think most people know that we need to be doing our own assemblies, yes, in our own areas, communities, right, and whatnot. However, doing a national grand jury that can try cases wherever,
sure,
whatever cases need to be done, right, makes sense to me. And, this is where there's been controversy on whether or not a national grand jury is a lawful method of doing things, or is that something that you can get yourself into trouble trying to do or whatever. Personally, it makes sense to me, and as I said, with the way that we're evolving over time here, we've become not only reliant on our cell phones and computers and whatnot, but we use them to increase our knowledge.
Indeed. Well, here's my take on that whole thing. If I'm a juror living on the land in Oregon, or a marshal or a justice of the peace or what have you, guess what? I'm on American soil. The American government at the highest level of governance is of, by, and for the people. So just because I live in Oregon doesn't mean I can only operate within my city. A city is a Vatican construct. It is Roman Curia law. So is the county or bureau or parish. So is the state. So is the nation. And so is the international law realm under the United Nations. All of those are artificial constructs, okay? Now, if we're going to be kings and queens upon the land, we can't serve two masters. We either serve our Creator and function in life with respect for any and all creations of any other, whether that's a song that some guy wrote or whether that's a natural law, right? But we shouldn't be thinking in terms of limitations on jurisdictional boundaries when those jurisdictions are legal constructs, whether it be a city, a county, a state, or a nation, because in a sense that is an admittance to honoring that jurisdiction.
Yeah, thank you. That, I'm so glad that you brought that up because, see, in my mind, I'm right there with you. I don't see those lines. I don't see the boundaries. I don't recognize those. Those are legal constructs, and we should not bind ourselves to those lines. Those geographical assumptive, or what is that? Assumptive lines, right? If you go back in law, I believe you're going to find that the tribal laws, and please help me on this, Troy, but the tribal law is going to also trump any other law.
Well,
again, and there are no geographical lines with tribal law.
Well, actually, there are. I mean, the Sioux fought against
going back. Okay, if you go back to before the United States was formed, into what we know now that way. Yeah.
See, for me, there's one jurisdiction for all, and that is jurisdiction under the blessing that we have that is called our experience in life. And as long as we act in honor of integrity and not only protect our own selves, but that of each and every other, and as long as our every outward expression in the presence of any other is one of creative, righteous expression, that should be the law. There's really only one law if you think about it, and that law is do no harm without rightful cause, period. That pretty much negates any and every code, rule, regulation, ordinance, or statute I can think of, because most of those legal instruments are in violation of true law. So we have to decide what jurisdiction we're going to operate from. Are we going to serve our Creator in honor and respect of any and all other creations of that Creator, or are we going to allow some man wearing a black dress and a fancy wig or whatever act as our Father?
If I may also,
mm-hmm.
I would like to go back to a point you brought up regarding the technology. I have said to people many, many times that the U.S. government and DARPA made one huge mistake. They released the Internet to the public. And at this point in time, we have one of the most well-informed global populations that this planet has ever seen. Now, the rub comes that Americans have been conditioned to not give a damn. They live in a soundbite world. If it takes work to go out and find the information, which is readily available. I mean, I took time, for about a 6-month straight period where I would go into a search engine and I would type in a random search function. And I would research it as much as I could in a day. And the next night I'd move on to something else. But what I found was that everything I was looking for is out there, but I had to make the effort to go and find it. And we all have the tools. We have marvelous tools to fight these people. The information is readily available on how to do it, but you have to take the time to go do it. And I made a promise to myself years ago that I would learn at least one new thing every day. And I have held to that for like years. So, how serious is it? What's it worth to you and your personal freedom to go out and find these things out, to look for the information, to ask questions? There are knowledgeable people. I mean, I've been amazed in the last year how many world movers and shakers I've been able to interact with through this tool we've been given. But a tool is a hammer will sit and rust if you don't pick it up and use it. And with that, I yield.
Thank you. Is there anyone else else out there that would like to speak up?
Hello?
Yes, please. Go ahead. Yes, please, go ahead.
I disagree with common law thing. Right now, we have people successfully moving real common law courts in our land successfully. And it's knowing how to do it. And I will say, if you want to learn how to do it, and he teaches a lot of people, you need to listen to Carl Lentz. I heard him when I first started looking and questioning. I'm like, yeah, well, that's interesting. That's easy, whatever. But I'd study, and I come back to him, and I study, and I come back. And every time I study and come back, I realize more what a genius he is, and that everything he does envelops everything that we've all learned and spoken about, and that, indeed, you can, as a man, move a case through a court in common law. And I do not mean military martial law common law. And I'm sitting here looking at the documents and how he does it here. And he does move a federal court at the district court because the federal courts are courts of common law. I've got a document here from the United States Courts site that he likes to use as an exhibit that talks about the state courts are common law courts. Jurisdiction of the federal courts is spelled out in Article 3, Section 2 of the United States Constitution. Federal courts are courts of limited jurisdiction because they can hear only two main kinds of cases. Anyway, that's one he likes to use. And he opens a common law court by his document, by I require a court of record trial by jury. And the words do matter. You don't want to try a jury trial. That just means they're kind of there spectating while the judge kind of tells them all what to do. You want a trial by the jury, where the jury's deciding. And you bring that to action by putting that in your document. Anyway, they're successfully moving real common law courts and winning right now, one-on-one in private cases. And you are prosecuting a man. You're not prosecuting an officer, a fake entity. But to take patience, you need to make sure that you say, are you still the man, that acts as the assessor or whatever? And they write you back and go, yeah, it's me. I'm John, and I'm the assessor or whatever. And then so you get them in writing to say these things. Anyway, you go after the man. The police officer didn't do anything. A man that sometimes acts as a police officer. Anyway, you go after the man or the woman in the office, and they are successfully moving those courts now. And on his website, A Broad Mind, I think it might be .org. I'm trying to think. You can see all these documents. I went and printed them out so I could use them as kind of a guide. They're fantastic, and they're simple, and they're direct, like we know how to do. Indeed, all of their laws, I call them office policies to help keep it straight in my head, are copyrighted, and anytime we use them, we're violating copyright laws. And once you spew one of their copyrighted materials, you're saying, I'm competent, I know your stuff, and they're gone. And it puts you into their jurisdiction. Anyway, I had the pleasure of meeting a woman this last year who was studying criminal law and has since had a brain injury, and she doesn't anymore. But we like to talk, and she said, well, if I ever have any questions, to ask her. One of the questions I had was why 24 hours a day, if you want the judge to get out of bed and in his jammies and come down at 3 o'clock in the morning on their holy day, on Christmas or something, they have to. And I said, but I can't find the citation for that, and where does that come from? And what she told me was pretty revealing, that indeed our battle isn't with flesh and blood, but the spiritual world, and this all really does boil down to whom do you give your oath and what you believe. And this is what she said to me. The reason they come down there and the reason they have to do that, and this is from the inside, from criminal law school, is that they believe that you are bringing your sin before them. I bring my sin before one judge that is worthy, one that is worthy to judge, only one that's worthy to open the seals, and only one that could take back the title deeds of the earth. And when I brought my sin before him, he was faithful to forgive that as far as east is from the west. And I contend that when we bring our sin before these men and put our faith in men, that in a roundabout way, in a direct way, that now we are almost worshiping other gods. We're saying, you are our judge. We're going to bring our sin before you, and you're going to decide whether I'm worthy, and you're going to judge me. But that's how they see it. They see it as you are bringing your sin before them, and that's very important, very solemn, and that you're going to admit everything, and if you're going to come and bring your sin before them, that they better get down there 24 hours a day. So, that was pretty shaking. Pretty made me think about, whom do I give my love? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was very good, because I know they do see it that way. It's such a strange, the spiritual aspect of the whole thing is so strange. But, I've used the line that we don't worship the money god, and that is what that is. If you submit to their jurisdiction, and if you consent to them governing you, then you are, there's your contract, right?
Just some ideas on terms. Federal means contract. Your federal government is a contract government. Human is color of man. Be careful. I'm not color of man. Heard something thought-provoking this week, and I'm thinking I'm the potter's clay now. Maybe I'm man, the potter's clay. They're some pretty riveting things. We all know about the Vatican and how vile they are. And I saw a presentation twice. I've watched it now this week that shows things about the Vatican, the Basilica, which is a castle or the serpent. The Basilica is a type of serpent. The whole thing is just horrible. But they do spells and spelling, and they change the words. And
yes, they do.
Yeah, it makes you mad.
Use every dirty trick in the book. They use every dirty trick in the book.
They know on the surface that you can't use a knife or a gun or whatever to go steal somebody's property, and yet that's what they do with words. And I claim that a rose by any other name is still a rose, and whatever they want to call it. I know who I am, and I know who I worship. So I yield.
Thank you. Do you know how to get in touch with Carl Lentz?
I don't, but I've studied him so much, I can almost tell you what he'd say to everything. Because the more I study other things, the more genius I look at his stuff. It's absolute genius, absolute genius. You can get a hold of him, and he'll come down, and they'll spend $5,000 to sit there and with you, and for people who are dumb enough to get a lawyer. And ask him the questions we should be asking him, like we're talking about now, walk out. But I love some of his testimonies. Two of my favorites were of one man. They didn't have time to prep them, and he didn't know what he was going to say. He actually showed up, and he walked in, and he said they're just led by the Spirit. He pointed at each actor that was there and just said, I do not recognize you. I don't recognize you. I don't recognize you to each one. Turned around, walked out. A couple of weeks later, they tried to call him and spent 15, 20 minutes trying to, convince him. He's like, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't understand. You don't know what you're saying. That went on for about 15, 20 minutes, and they finally got flabbergasted, hung up, and you never heard from him again. The other testimony I liked was another man had gone in, and he was looking at 20 years in drug charges. And he gave his testimony of how he was saved by the blood of Jesus, and he walked out of there. And I think when he did that, when I hear other things later, I think he was, you can't worship two gods. Yeah, he pretty much eliminated all the presumption. This is who I am. This is to whom I give my oath. This is the law that I'm under. And right there in front of God, and everybody professed his Messiah. And he walked out. Those are individual cases of faith, based on each man. But what it says to me is those things are powerful. And indeed, unless you give them permission, they don't have it. And I have been reading a document called Lawfully Yours. Is anyone here familiar with that?
Lawfully Yours?
Yeah, it's from anticorruptionsociety.com/lawfully yours. It talks about a lot of the things that we covered today.
Oh, nice.
That I think everybody would enjoy before our next phone call. I yield.
Okay.
If I may, there was one more little thing, and you're right in asking for a trial by the jury, but you also have to specify that this is an Article III court for the record. You have to make sure that you include that in your language, because otherwise they're not obligated to record it. So with that, I yield.
Yeah, the document says court of record. I require a court of record trial by jury. So there's a very specific structure to move the common law court, and it's by your language, and they will still be moving their administration, and they will even make their arguments, and they can and will try to pull you over to the statutory side, and there's ways not to do that. It takes practice, obviously, and knowing the trick. He has a lot of teachings. If you really want to know this stuff, it's just like everything else, you've got to be willing to listen. He's put it all out there. You could have him on this phone call, and he's going to tell you everything that he's got right there that you could listen to at your leisure anytime you want to in 5 to 20 minute sound bite on YouTube. When you put him in, he doesn't have a site, but a whole bunch of things will come over on the right. And the ones you want to listen to that are the clearest and that are very well labeled are the ones where he's in a blue background sitting there with another man in a radio show. The only one that has a picture of people on it. They're more clear than the other presentations that are on there. And then they're labeled very detailed, so that if you want to know about filing a claim, traffic things, just everything, how to write to the man in the black robe, how to write to the prosecutor, all these things. It's all there. What I like is that they put these together in combination, so if you're driving and you don't want to change the show every 5 minutes or 20 minutes, that you can run them so that you can kind of get your head turned around and thinking that way. But the more I study this, the more I hear, and I'm looking for those common threads, and after a while they start coming to the surface. But everything he does has continuity with that, agrees with that, and he does it. It's kind of like the Atkins diet. It's really easy, but it's really hard. But everything he says, and it's that less is more, less syllables, less words. Don't be using their language. Just say what a man would say. And his documents on his Broad Mind site, you've got to look. It's hard to find stuff on there. Really have some great examples of how to do that, so that when you're listening to him, you can kind of see what he did. And he doesn't give he doesn't give template things, but you have to really listen when you listen to his things, and he'll come up with things verbally. I did a rescission letter that I wrote up. I had to stop the show and start it 13 times to get it all. And then, of course, you customize that, how that's best for you. But he's amazing, and he's worth listening to, and you can listen to him right there. There's nothing that he doesn't talk about. Those shows with him, the blue background, I think I've got 493 of them in a file right now. And they're so detailed in their labeling that you can put in a search and find just about anything you want. Yield.
Thank you for sharing that information. And I'd love to have a little time with Carl Lentz and see if he'd be willing to come on to one of our calls here in the future. So if anyone has the ability to reach out to him, or I'll be looking for a way to contact him.
If I may, on his Broad Mind site, he does have a way to get a hold of him, and it says, "Do you wish to have a one-on-one with a man?" Carl Lentz. But there is a place on that website where if you want a one-on-one time with him, you can have it. But I don't imagine it's free.
Sure. Well, thank you.
But you can contact him and put in a message if you go to that site.
Yeah, I don't know if he's doing any. Has he been doing any recent broadcasts?
The last one that I downloaded was about 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, and I think that he's been busy doing other things or something, because I think I get the idea that they're longer shows that they've broken out and they're putting, parts, 3 or 4 calls on a post that they're putting on, 3 or 4 subjects. So it's been a while. So he's got so much stuff out there.
Right. Oh, Carl Lentz is absolutely great. He's a brilliant man, and his story is quite the story, too.
Mm-hmm. Well, he's moving in common law court. He's teaching people to do it, the real thing. And although forming the assemblies and all that stuff is very important, it's nice that people can have hope that in the meantime there are things you can do and ways that you can stand and have a standing in that court.
But doesn't Carl Lentz, part of what many of us have learned in the Court of Records calls and some of these different things that we've been doing together is that the Court of Records is not in the building, okay? And Carl Lentz is so good with being able to manage the courtroom and turn it into a common law courtroom, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
That he's kind of in a class of his own that way. And I wonder what his take would be on the Court of Records, or maybe on the Court of Records.
He would say, you guys are just making this way too hard. You just go, that's what he would say. You guys are just making this too hard. He would say, you make it a common law court by your papers, by saying this is a Court of Record, in this Court of Record.
May I?
Yes.
This is Marshall Townsend. Oh, thank you, man. This is Marshall Townsend over in Texas. And I can tell you out of experience personally that I've been arrested twice for driving without a license. And I've done counterclaims against, we have a total of 12 law enforcement officers here in town, and I've sued 10 of them and 2 judges, and won both cases. And the way we did it is exactly what you're talking about, is using a Court of Record. But one of the things that makes it so awesome is the way that Justice Hamilton writes some of the papers, is that judges have actually applauded him because they are so well written and so plain and simple that a third grader could read them and understand them. They're, like they said, they're very short statements that make clear and precise statements that you can't argue with, because they're statements that are law and they can't get around. And so when we do that, just like she said, when we file my counterclaim, we put in there, I, Randall Townsend, in this Court of Record, and you claim what it is. And once you claim what it is, and there's no objections, which nobody ever does because they don't understand it, which is crazy, then they just turn around and go with it. And
because no man will ever come forward.
Correct. And so even in my federal case that I filed, I actually had the judge send me an entire form asking my permission to have judicial power in my court.
Mm-hmm.
That's how
It's
much
your
they know
court.
that we know. That's how much they know. And I refused to even put it in. I didn't fill out anything, but I put it in my records as a file to use for evidence that, look, he knows he has no judicial power because he's asking me, can I have it, please? And with me not filing this means I retain my power in my court. And so that's how we fight it. In fact, 2 weeks ago, I put a lien on one of the police officers' houses here in town, and they actually sent a Texas Ranger to my house, actually this last Friday, and sat for almost 2 hours investigating, and I explained all this. He asked me, how did you do this? And I told him, in a court of record. I said, in fact, and I tell everybody, as soon as you file, expect it. They're going to send you, the judge will send you a dismissal. You're getting dismissed. It's automatic. Okay, but
they have to.
The
living. What does the living have to do with the dead? They can't recognize you in their court. They can't see you. They can't hear you. You can't speak to each other. This is the one thing.
We did. We made them change their minds. Because what we did was immediately when they dismiss our case, we do a writ of error and put the judge in his place, because in a court of record, a judge has no judicial power, which he has ministerial duties only. That is in the definition of a court of record. So when we put him in his place, I have never had another judge say another word ever again. Ever. They've never answered another paper. I signed the end of my court papers. It is my ruling, because it is my court. The judge is simply there to make sure I don't break the common law rules of the common law court, which is the court of record.
They're there as a magistrate.
Correct. He has, and in fact, it says he has ministerial duties only. So
he's only there
to that.
Yeah, he's only there to once that you've moved your court and the order's been made. He's just there to enact it after the fact.
No, he's not even there. We don't even let him sign anything.
He's there as a clerk to just say, yeah,
correct.
That's it.
Correct.
That's what
correct.
I'm saying.
And he's literally there to make sure neither side break the rules. He's a referee.
Well, and the fun thing is, you make the rules in your court.
And that is why in our case, every time we put a case in, we do Exhibit A, which is always a 12-page document it's called the law of the case, which makes the laws for our case. For instance, the Texas Constitution states that there will be one court of record in every county in Texas. Okay? Well, I use that court. And I tell them, that is my court. That is the court of record. It is my court. Nobody has any power in it. And that's what blew away the Texas Ranger on Friday was I told him, I overturned 2 judges' decisions and ruled in my case. And he said, what? I said, yeah, it's my court. That's what you're not getting. Mm-hmm. He has no power.
Mm-hmm. You can't speak in their court.
Statutes are allowed. I said, the only time you can bring a statute or code into a court of record is when you're using it against a government employee, which is bound to that code or statute. We are not, which means they cannot use them against us because we're not bound to them. They are. And
Thank
I said,
you so much.
So that's where we go and attack them. And I'm telling you, I've had 2 cases, and the only thing that we've had done now is a clerk has tried to actually push the button and say that the case was closed, was dismissed because the judge demanded it. Then we did our writ of error. The judge never replied, which meant what we put in was lawful. And we went ahead and did our final judgment because nobody answered it. And so now that is one of the cases, and I told the Texas Ranger that clerk committed a felony. Mm-hmm. You know as well as I know, they have no judicial power, but yet that clerk, and his name is Edmund Dietz, and he's at the North Texas, and I gave him all the information. I said, that is him. And I said, you can go look at it yourself. It's right there. And he said, you're right. You can't do that. I said, well, he did it, or he tried.
She trespassed upon your case, and you could actually pursue her privately for trespassing on your case, for administering your property without consent.
Correct. And see, that's one of the things. We won the case, which got me off of the driving without a license, but we're literally are so busy with cases, we don't have time to go back and get all these people for all the things they've done. And see, that's a problem also. And see, like,
so they
like
still
I
get away
told
with
people
it.
here, and like I told the texter, I have literally 12 liens that I have against the law enforcement in this area and judges. I said, but I have only put one on, and that is because all the other ones have obeyed the law up to this point. I said, I don't want their money. That was never my point. I said, I won the judgment, which has real money attached, but I will not put the liens in until I see that they are breaking the law again. I said, because my point was never to get money. It was to make them obey the law. And I said, this one police officer has refused. And I said, that is why I put the lien on his house is on a separate case. He has stepped in, and so I put a lien on his house. So they called in the Texas Ranger. I said, sure, bring them. It's all lawful. In fact,
what Carl would say,
which spooked us, because it spooked me, because when I filed the lien, I got a letter back from the court with every page stamped, and that they had put it, the county attorney had demanded that it be put in the vault. I sent all this to the justices, and come to find out the reason they did was because it is a common law lien, and it is $21,000 of real money.
Mm-hmm.
So by law, since it is real money, they must keep it in a vault and secure it as if it were $21,000 cash laying there on the counter. That's how lawful they even know it is.
If I may, I just want to say bravo and kudos. You are a true warrior, sir.
Absolutely.
Well, I will tell you, I was one of the ones that me and my wife spent 5 days in solitary confinement out in New Mexico.
Yeah, you guys were. They're, absolute warriors. And we have warriors. We are warriors. We have to be. It's the time that we live in.
We must speak the truth no matter where we go. And I don't care if we're talking about Jesus Christ being your only way for salvation, or if we're talking about law. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart. There is only one way to do things, and it is God's way, and that's the law. So, and I yield.
Truth is one of the maxims of law.
Say again, I missed that.
I say the truth is one of the maxims of law. The truth and nothing but the truth is part of every court. It runs on the basis that everyone is, providing the truth and nothing but the truth. So help me God, under oath, penalty of perjury, all that superfluous. But
yes,
the
sir.
Truth.
Yes, sir.
And I yield.
If I may.
Please, go ahead.
I just wanted to say to Randy, Marshall Townsend, thank you for sharing your testimony. It's always great for people who haven't had court battles yet to hear that we're winning in the arena, and I yield.
I will tell you this. I went to court, if you don't mind. I went to court, and I actually, when I first filed my my first case was I just used a district court here, which is my court of record here in the county, okay? And that one went well. The second case, that we thought they would fight more, so we thought, well, we'll take it to federal court, so that's what we did. But when we did, I filed it on Friday. Well, I was supposedly had court on Monday for the case for the driving without a license, which I've been arrested for, and I've been strip searched, slammed against my vehicle, never had my rights read. I mean, this has been really horrible. But anyways, we get to court, and I hand the judge the federal court papers that they've been filed in federal court, and he said, well, you should have told me this more than 24 hours ago, so you're going to sit down and have court. I said, okay. Well, what I should have done is walk, but I didn't, and I found out why he was so demanding, and that's because they want the money for your bond, out of your bond, and the only way they can get it is that they get a guilty verdict against you. So that's how they collect their money off the bond. So what I did is I went ahead and stupidly I went through court, But I questioned the officer that arrested me. And I asked him, I said, have you ever I said, I don't expect you to know the law because there's so many laws. I said, that's ridiculous. I said, but I would expect you to know the laws for the citations that you write. So have you ever read all the citations for the laws for the citations that you write? And he said, no. I said, okay, do you study the law at all? And he said, no. And he started getting angry. And I said, well, let me ask you this. Have you ever read the Constitution for the oath that you took to support and defend? And he turned beet red, and I cannot believe it, but he literally said, no, I have not. And I looked at the jury and I said, look, this is what we call a law enforcement officer that has never read the laws, has never studied the laws, has never even read the laws for the citations, and has never even read his oath that he took to support and defend the Constitution. And I said, the laws that I'm talking to you about today are case law, which based off the Constitution. And I said, and that's the problem. He doesn't know the difference. And, of course, they found me guilty, fined me $500, and that was okay because we took it to federal and had it overturned. So, but that's just to say that's how they run it, because they went ahead and they started saying I was badgering the witness, of course, and the judge sustained immediately. So, and I yield. Just kind of tell you a little backstory. I yield.
If I may.
Please, go ahead.
Hi, this is Troy, and I've got to run, but I wanted to thank you for having me join you all and also express my sincerest love, appreciation, gratitude, and respect for all of the information you've been so kind as to share. I've had a great time, and I'll look forward to maybe getting together again soon. In the meantime, love, best wishes, and blessings to y'all, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you so much, Troy, and have a wonderful evening.
And I also must beg off at this point. I hope to join you in the future also. I must admit I thought I've learned a lot, but you folks have provided me with some additional information, which is quite helpful, and I truly appreciate it. And I wish you all a wonderful evening. Peace be with you always and in all ways.
Take care, brother. Thank you very much for joining us.
If I may?
Pleasure.
If I may?
Go ahead.
Several weeks ago, I don't know if it was on this call or another one of the gentlemen was quoting some phrases, some sections of the Fruit from a Poisonous Tree book that Stanford had done. And that book, if people are interested, is available free online. And it's an excellent, excellent read. And you can find that at Stop the Globalist, and I think it is .com. And it's Fruit from a Poisonous Tree. And the whole book is there for free to look at, and it does include forms. Talks about the IRS and foreclosures and all kinds of cool stuff. He gives his own declaration of self-governance and political status, which we all find out becomes unique to each man and woman. Anyway, I just wanted everybody to know where they could find that resource. Yield.
Indeed. Thank you very much for sharing that. I have been to that website myself, and definitely that's good information. And I know that book is very good in showing us how to exit Babylon and correct your status. So thank you for sharing that. Does anyone else have any questions, comments, or?
Yep, ma'am.
Sure, go ahead.
This is Marshall Townsend. Yeah, I just wanted to tell whoever else is on that if y'all want, and I do this because I love people and I love to see this grow, and that is if anybody ever wants a copy of my cases or anything that I've got put together, I've got right to travel affidavits that I keep in my vehicle for my wife and I that we hand if we ever get stopped. I do not register my vehicle. I don't have the license tags expired in 2013. I don't have a driver's license because we don't need one. So I've got a lot of stuff that I am willing to share with everybody. So if anybody wants to email me at randyt@afreecountry.com. randyt@afreecountry.com. Email me anything you wish for me to send you. And I'm telling you, people, this is for free. This is how we teach each other. This is how we learn. So let's share, because it's just like the Bible says. I have a talent, and I want to share my talent so you can build on your talents. So when we appear before God, we can say, look, Lord, we didn't just bury our talents. We shared them so that others would learn. Okay? So that's what I believe. We do this. So let's do it, okay? So whatever y'all need help with, please email me. Okay?
If I may.
And I yield.
Thank you. Yes, go ahead.
This is Captain Kevin. Randy, if you don't mind, I could take a generic version of your right to travel affidavit and post it as an image on this call when it goes up on YouTube.
Well, if you'll email me, I will send it to you. I have no problem with it at all. I'm telling you.
All right. You have my email address. Yeah, you have my email address already. You've already sent me your court documents. It's capkev@unseen.is.
If you don't mind, you just mind emailing me a request.
Yeah, I can do that. No problem.
Whatever you want, I'm telling you, people, whatever you want, I'll send you. I don't have a problem with it. Okay? Just ask me and you shall receive, because it's free.
Thank you so much for being that, and really together we have so many incredible documents, right? I mean, there's been so much that has come out to help us.
I've got an 18-page document that I gave the Texas Ranger. It's kind of a mosh posh of everything, but I kind of tried to divide it up. It's kind of a rough draft, though. You have to understand that. But the information is astounding that's in there. And I have that like the Road to Freedom for Americans, or I don't know what I named it, but that's in there also. I can send that to you. So whatever you want, I kind of try to, cover as much as I can.
Awesome.
Well, I think that's a wonderful thing to put up on the in the description box on the YouTube, and we can pull some other things together too to maybe put in there. Yeah, those things are excellent. And when I say that, I think we should take an attitude of educating as many as we can and treating each encounter with the de facto as an opportunity to help along. It sounds like you have established pretty good relationships along the way there, Marshall Townsend, huh?
Well, you know what? I have one sheriff deputy that I have not sued that stops by ever so often. In fact, he stopped by the other day and was like, "Hey, how you doing, Mr. Townsend?" I said, "I'm doing fine." And I went out there and I said, "So how you doing?" And he said, "Good." He said, "What's going on?" I said, "Well," I said, "everything's going great as long as you guys obey the Constitution." I said, "As long as y'all do that," I said, "I'll help you." I said, "Like I've told you before, I'm for the innocent. Whoever's innocent is the one I'm going to help." I said, "I don't care if it's you or the other person. Whoever's innocent." He just kind of looked at me. I said, "You're not always right." And he just looked at me. I said, "So whoever's innocent was following the Constitution is the one I'm going to help." And I said, "But if you ever need me, I won't let anybody kill you. I promise you that."
Nice.
So that's where I left it. But he's the only one that stops by out of 12. But I've sued.
Well, he's the only one you haven't sued, right?
Yeah, except for one. There's one other. So.
That's funny. Well, hopefully, they're not going to gang. I'm surprised. Do you get gang stalked?
Yes. In fact, they come by this house. In fact, I don't live in a troublesome neighborhood. It used to be until I moved in, and then I stopped it. I mean, I ran drug addicts away. I ran drug dealers. This whole neighborhood changed because I don't put up with that shit. Sorry for my language. I just don't. And so I straightened this place up. So there's no need for them to come around here, but they still do. And it got so bad at one point that it was probably 15, 20 times a day that they were coming by my house. And I finally was like, yeah, this is getting, because I started saying, I'm going to start recording it, because if it's more than what you're recording or have on your houses, recording on your recordings, then we know it's harassment. And I put that on my Hamilton, Texas Important News page on Facebook, and would you believe that they stopped? That was the end of it. As soon as I put on there that I was recording it, and if somebody else had a recording, we'd see if they were harassing. That put them on notice, and I'm telling you, they quit coming around for months.
So they went on Michael Hamilton's website and read it, or?
No. They've learned all this from me suing them, and in fact, that was one of the questions the Texas Ranger asked me, because I wrote a letter and went to the city council 2 months in a row, and the last letter I wrote them was, the last sentence was, at what point is it okay to kill the police? And I left the video for them to watch. And the Texas Ranger asked me about it. He said, so what did you mean by to send this to the city council for? I said, well, the city council is the one that approves everything that the police officers do. They are in control of the police officers. So anything the police officers do, they're responsible for. So my point is at what point in law is it okay for them to continue to break the law? I said, because case law states that if they are come to arrest me for something that's unlawful for them to do, then I can fight them off as it be any assault and battery. Which means if it gets to the point, I could kill them because they are doing something unlawful. So my point is, I don't want this to get to that point. I want you as a city council to take notice and say, hey, look, you have laws to abide by, and you have to know who they pertain to. And not every code and statute pertains to everyone. So at what point is it okay for us to kill the police? Their ears perked up real fast. Because it's the truth.
Yeah, you do have to be ever so careful, though, whenever you
and you're correct, and that's what I told them. And that's why I worded it that way. At what point is it okay? Because they're already breaking the law. I've proved it twice in court now. So at what point is it okay? Because now it's been proven.
What was the video you left with them?
It was I have to go back and look. It was the one, in fact, the guy asked me, do you know him? Larkin or Larson? He's a guy from Fort Worth or somewhere up in Dallas area, because he asked me, you know him? Because you lived up there. And I said, no, I've never seen this guy. He's the one that teaches anarchy, but it's not the anarchy what you think. Anarchy is when we all pull together and use our own resources to protect our own selves. And we need no government to protect us. We can protect ourselves. And so that's the type of anarchy he thinks of. And so, I mean, I'm fine with that. We're, make the police go home. I'm cool with that. We the people can handle it. As neighborhoods, we can stop crime if you want to, or if you want, you can sit there and let crime happen. That's up to you. I choose not to in my neighborhood, and everybody knows it. I've had pit bulls sicked on me. I've had people threaten to kill me. I'm telling you, they hate me around here. I just have my doc mentality from being with the Marines for 15 years and being an instructor and an inspector taught me to not back down. If you're right, stand up and say something. And because that's the only way you're going to fix it. You don't fix things by sitting back and going, well, they're doing it again. Well, no, stop. You're not going to do this to me if it's against the law. And see, that was the crazy thing I have to tell everybody. I did it the wrong way, and I've told everybody on the marshal's call, don't do it like I did. Because when I learned these things over 2.5, almost 3 years ago, when I learned them, I expected to show them to the cops and them go, oh, okay, awesome. We'll do that for you. That was my not being naive. Because that's what I expected. I didn't see the background of the bonds and all that, the money involved in it. I didn't see that their revenue is based off of all this. I just saw laws. And I grew up knowing that laws mean something and you must obey them. So, see, when I did it, I got an attitude and was like, you got to do this. Well, I ended up in jail getting strip searched. You know, so I tell people, no, don't do it the way I did. Educate them first in a peaceful, correct manner, and it's better if you do it before you get in trouble prior, you know, like now. Educate
Don't
your
do it on the side of the street.
Exactly, because all you're going to do is tick them off, and you're going to get your window busted in, and you're going to jail. Because I did.
I think Chief Jones's interview elaborated that perfectly when he talked about they're not taught the difference between commerce and private. Everything to them is commerce.
Correct.
There's no difference to them.
You are very correct. And that's where we have to, and that's where Chief Murray has taught me from his background with all the different places to actually say, look, the problem is they need educating like we've been telling them. So that is why we've been working on the notice to all law enforcement and all state officials. And that, in fact, I told the Texas Ranger, we're hoping that'll be out and finalized within 2 weeks to get that to everyone in the United States. Every law enforcement, I want everybody to spread it everywhere, because that will tell them what jurisdiction and what authority the Continental Marshals, justices, grand jury members, and the people have over this commerce crap. They've got to be educated, because if we don't, we're fighting against the guys that are walking up to us with guns and badges, and it's either going to be a gunfight or we're going to have to submit and then fight them in court later, and that's what I suggest.
Amen.
You know, that's what I told the Texas Ranger. I don't fight them physically. If you come to arrest me, I will turn around and I will put my hands behind my back. Not 1 second will be made with anything with you against you arresting me. You have to do your job, but I will tell you, you will be sued in a court of law, and I promise you, I will win. I said, because you don't have the jurisdiction you think, but I'm not going to physically fight you. You're crazy. I value my life, because you guys take this too serious. You will kill a man over driving without a license. That's how stupid this has gotten. It's not rational thinking. It's you must obey, period. And that is the fallacy of their training. And that's where Chief Murray is helping me, that we need to disseminate these letters and get all this information to them, so then they recognize who we are and what's going on, because this should go to all their training sessions too, so that all of them are educated, so that we stay safe, and then we can start educating them on the side of the road, because they've now been told, but not fight them. There's a big difference.
I don't remember who said it, but somebody once said that the pen is more powerful than the sword.
You are definitely correct. Yep. And see, that's what they're proving to themselves now, which is blowing them away, because I'm telling you, if you go to my page at Hamilton, Texas Important News on Facebook, I post things from my town, and I pin it to the top when I do my court cases against these police officers. So right now, they know that I put a lien against a cop's house, property. And a lot of them said, well, post it. I said, look, I'm not that stupid. Look, I don't want the officer hurt. I don't want his family hurt, which has his address on it. I don't want the man hurt. I want him just to obey the law. So you're not going to find it I'm not posting his address. Now, if you want to go to the courthouse and go get a copy of it, that's your business. But I will not freely give this police officer's house address out just for your information, so you have more information. You're crazy. He knows it's real, or you wouldn't all be on here. So that's why I'm just hoping that all of this, will come out, and well, I know it'll all come out. The truth will, especially with the Texas Ranger on it now. I think he's a very honorable man. In fact, that's one of the things I told him sitting at my table. I said, look, you know what a stickler I am for the law because I called you when the cops were making illegal search warrants here in town, and you came in and found out that I was telling you the truth, and you stayed for 4 days training them because they were that bad. He just looked at me. He said, yeah. I said, so you know what a stickler I am for the law. So you know what I'm telling you is the truth. And he just was, like I said, writing notes. So, but like I said, people, if there's anything I can do to help you out, please don't hesitate to email me, okay? And I say email because that is so much easier for me to go, hey, look, this is what they need. I can send it right back instead of me trying to remember all the people I talked to because I expected one phone call a week. And I'm sorry I got in this one late, but I was helping some other people with a court case. That's why I got on the call late.
Yeah, we're glad to have you whenever you get here.
Absolutely.
Well, I'm just telling you, I just had to help some other people, and I told them I'll just have to wait, and then I'd call in. And hopefully, y'all still be on here. So, it turned from one night of being on the marshal's call to Monday through Thursday now. And I'm like, guys, I need, I love helping. I do. But, sometimes it's overwhelming when it's every night. And that's the only thing, But, hey, like I said, if I'm not busy, my God, I love helping people. So I don't mind at all. And if y'all ever want to call, email me. And because a lot of this is recorded, I won't give my phone number. But if y'all will email me, trust me, I will send you my email or my phone number, and you can call me and ask me anything at any time. And I don't care if you're in trouble at 3 o'clock in the morning, you call me, okay? And I mean that. I really do.
So would you be the right one to call if we were to get detained on the side of the road and you need to send an alert out?
Sure. You can call me, and I can contact. Of course, you need to kind of let me know, like, who I need to contact for you in your area or whatever, whoever it is, But, yeah, I don't have a problem at all. And I'll talk to any officer on the side of the road, too, if he'll talk to me on the phone. Just
a couple of times when a couple of our people were detained and then kidnapped, we had people that called in on their behalf, like as soon as the detainment started. On the side of the road. The phone call started, we had justices in different ones making contact with the local sheriff there.
And that's the one thing that we are so adamant about getting this notice to all the law enforcement, all the state officials, all the way down to your local police, is because once we issue this notice, they are bound to obey it. Okay, that's what the notice is from we the people. So we are binding them to this, and they have no choice because we're giving them the law behind it. And I've seen it's about a 5-page document. But once it goes out, you shouldn't have a problem from then on. And if you do, we should be able to handle it from the side of the road. We should. That's if they're listening to their roll calls, when they give them all their things for the day,
There's that magic. Yeah.
So all that mess. Yeah. Yes, ma'am. So as soon as they disseminate all this information, we should be good because they should then be trained and they then have to abide by it. And then you can carry that notice if you want with you, and if you get stopped, hand it to them. That's what I would advise.
Every marshal should be carrying that once it's out.
You are definitely every people of the U.S. should be carrying that in their automobile once this goes out. Because what it does is it teaches them the difference in commerce and the people. And that they have no jurisdiction over people. Their job is commerce. The only time that a police officer of any type can step in to mess with the people is when we've harmed another people or a people's property. That's it. Because that is a crime. Okay? So we do have to recognize that. Other than that, they have no jurisdiction.
Right. And therein lies the rest, first question out of your mouth, or first question out of my mouth if I am detained is, where's the injured party?
Well, what's really
Right?
crazy is here's the thing, though. They don't understand that. They don't. They don't understand what that means. We do, but they don't. And that's the problem. When you go, well, where's the injured party? They go, so what? You're getting a citation. There's no injured party. You're getting a citation for speeding or driving without a license. That's what you're getting. There's no injured party. What are you talking about? Their training is to write you citations to get revenue.
Which, when here's the thing, all right? There's been an awful lot of things said on this call tonight, and I know you weren't here for a portion of the call, so.
I didn't get on until like 9:30 almost.
No, okay. Yeah, then you didn't hear most of it. But there are people out there that are happy to take those citations or summons or whatever that is, when they give you a ticket.
Right.
Because it is a commercial instrument, and you can turn around and, cash it in somehow, I guess.
Well, they do.
I don't know how that works.
Well, what they do is once they have a judgment against you, whether default, whether you don't show up or whatever, as soon as they have
I'm talking about the operator of the vehicle, okay, the traveler. Let's say the traveler gets pulled over by de facto. De facto writes a ticket to the traveler. Traveler takes that ticket and turns it into, well, it already was a commercial instrument, but somehow Traveler takes it and they cash it in and are able to, draw the finance or other. However you want to look at that. I guess I don't look at it like finance. I don't know what it is exactly, but
Well, you're right. And if you're talking about the same, I know a gentleman that went and bought a truck not too long ago, and he used a 1099-C. And it's really crazy because he went to the bank, and this is kind of the way courts work too, okay? Because it's all worked on bonds and money that, see, in 1933, they literally took all the gold. And by taking the gold, they said, we pay for everything. You no longer have debt. Okay?
Right.
So any debt we incur, I don't care if it's a utility bill, a car payment, anything, you can send a 1099-C to the IRS. They will turn around and send a paid in full to the person that's, sending you bills, whoever they may be. And this guy did the same thing with the truck. And now he went to the bank and got a credit. He went to the dealership, bought a vehicle with the credit from the bank. He drove it home. The bank turned around or the dealership called the bank and said, we want our money. They said, well, he hasn't signed the papers. He just got a credit. And so the bank then called him at the house, and he said, you gave them the authorization for me to get the vehicle. He said, yeah, but you didn't sign anything here. He said, well, that was on your deal. I just wanted to know how much credit I had, and you gave it to me. So I went and gave it to the company. They gave me a truck. And so he filed the 1099-C and sent it to the IRS, and the IRS, the bank, paid in full. So for the whole vehicle cost. So the bank is now saying, you stole the vehicle. He said, no, I didn't. You've been paid off. The IRS proves it. And so that's a thing that people are doing. Instead of paying citations, they're doing this and filing it and pay it in full and sending it to the IRS. And they, in turn, send them whoever it is that's paid in full.
See, now I would like to know more about that because there's the 1099-A, 1099-OID.
Yep.
And then, of course, there's 1040 and, some other ones too. But the 1099-C, I never got into that because what I had learned to date had to do with the 1099-A and 1099-OID, Form 56 and a
we're going to try it because of all the debt we went into going out to New Mexico. They confiscated our phones, my sidearm, all kinds of stuff from my automobile, and so we had to get a new phone. Well, my wife said we're going to try the 1099-C on AT&T on just the phone and see how it works, and maybe in a couple of weeks or a week or so, maybe I'll be able to update y'all. See how that works.
Nice. Yeah.
Sounds like that might have to be a topic for a whole call. There was somebody recently on another call that discussed the 1099s. I can't remember if it was Justice Mickey or somebody else, but somebody's talked about that recently.
Most of them right now are talking about the 1099 OID, which is by Mr. Keatings. He's on YouTube. You can look him up. It's Keatings, Keatings? Right. Yes. Gene Keatings, I think, is Jean, I think. I'm not sure about the first name. But I know it's Keatings. And you can look him up. He's an older gentleman, and he talks about all the 1099 OIDs. I watched a 3-hour presentation he had the other day. And to me, it's the same as doing a 1099-C. It's just, in his way, he does a lot of filing at the end of the year for tax purposes that I don't see the necessity of if you're doing the 1099-C. The OID, to me, has a lot of process to it, you know what I mean, with taxes at the end of the year, because you have to file that you wrote off all this, and he's talking about all these forms, which really confuse me. But the 1099-C, the articles I've listened to about that, and things I've read, it's just a simple form that you fill out and you send it to the IRS, and it has all the blanks. You know, it asks all the questions in the blanks for you to fill out, and you fill them in and send it in, and they turn around and send the people paid in full. Because technically, we all know there is really no money. It's just a bunch of gobbledygook digits being thrown back and forth. So, and since 1933, since all the gold was taken and all of our debt is paid from now on, that means this is 1099-C. We're just doing what was promised us in 1933, that we have no debt. So everything we do is paid for already.
Well, going even further than that, the way that I have comprehended all of that is that not only do we not have any, debts that we're liable for, so to speak, but also anything that you have paid in for mortgages or
you are correct. You can get back
car payments or whatever, that's supposed to come back to you.
Yes, ma'am. Everything you've ever paid. In fact, that's one thing that we wanted to try since my parents have paid off their mortgage now. We were going to try that with my parents' mortgage and see if we could get them paid back for all the money they paid in.
Right.
But my mom, right now, mom still thinks I'm crazy. So
yeah.
My dad's all behind me. My mom goes, "You're crazy."
Right. There is nothing like that out there, right? Yeah.
Why do you think you keep getting arrested, Randy?
Right. You better be careful. Yeah, I know. We get it all, right?
And my dad's, "Go for it, Randy. You're doing the right thing, son."
All right, Papa.
Yeah. So, and my dad's a Baptist preacher, has been my entire life. So.
Oh man. Oh yeah. Wow.
Real quick, I want to give everybody an update on the YouTube posts.
I
think I'm pretty much gotten the kinks worked out of getting the audios converted. I posted a video this morning and labeled it the Marshal's Call, but it is actually the national call from last Thursday that Chief Jones was on. So I've got to make that correction. And then last Monday's conference call is almost ready to post. And then as soon as I have time, I'll get tonight's call on. So.
What's the website? Is that are you Canadian Prepper?
Colorado Prepper.
Colorado Prepper. Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, I knew it was one of them. All right. Yes, I saw. In fact, I started listening to one. I was like, "Hey, that's my voice." I was like, "Hey, okay, I got you." All right, I've already subscribed. So
awesome.
Nice. Oh, thank you so much, Captain Kev. That is, that's a lot of work.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, I've noticed that all of this is a lot of work for all of us, and that's the thing that I appreciate about everybody that's involved. Is it takes a lot of work to do this, but everybody so far that we've been working with has been so awesome. They really have, and that's one thing I appreciate. This is a brand new group, people. This is a group that I think that loves God, and we love the truth no matter what it is, and we're willing to sacrifice, and that's what I love about us, okay? And I yield.
I have one more question for you, Randy, in case I'm not on tomorrow night's call. What's the update on the questionnaire?
The questionnaire, the last that I messed with it, to be honest with you, I sent it to Marshall Shaw. Marshall Shaw is the lead for the vetting and recruiting, so that is one of the main jobs that he needs that for, because he can't do his job without that questionnaire. So he's got that in hand. There were 3 edits that I'd already done, but he does have it for now. To be honest with you, I have not checked up with him because I'm just being honest, man. I've had this late. In fact, this morning for 3 days, I'm telling you, I do not write papers. Okay, I do not write court papers, and that's just not what I do. I know a lot of stuff. I just don't do that. It makes no sense trying to take a story and put law into it. Okay, my brain doesn't function that way. So, and I tell you all this to say that I worked for 3 days and could not come up with how to help this lady with her case. And finally this morning I thought, you know what, forget it. And I spent the whole morning and I read the whole book of Mark, and I thought, Lord, if I can't do this, then I'll just study your word. So I did that. And when I was done, I got in there, and 2 hours later I was done with her paper. And I sent it to Justice Hamilton for editing. And hers is a couple of cases that I'm dealing with here that we're wrapping them up into one. So, I've been working on her case. Then I've got other people I'm helping with cases. So I honestly, to be honest, I'm just being honest, I haven't had time. I really haven't. And I hate that because if I'm not mistaken, it's either the SOP or the questionnaire. We gave the assembly a deadline of June 1st. We had to have it done, which means we don't have long. Okay, right. Time will sneak up on us. So all I can say is I do need to touch bases, but right now I don't know where it's at.
They're both important, but I would think the questionnaire is really more important for initial recruiting because people like me are just waiting in limbo.
You are absolutely correct. And see, that's one of the main things that made me mad about dealing with the last group that was in charge was I couldn't get anything from her ever, and that really ticked me off because we were always being told, we got this working, and we never saw anything. And that's why, if you'll notice, a lot of times I send all of this out to the assembly so that the assembly can see, look, this is kind of what we're working on. This is where we're at. If anybody wants to pitch in, have at it. You know what I mean? This is real people. This ain't just the marshals writing this. Anybody can help.
Yeah, and I can tell you, I've already got other people interested in the marshals program.
See, I have to say I wish I did, but in these 3,000 people that we've got in this town that I live in, and 65% are senior citizens, that makes a very small group, and the cops are attacking all those, and they're scared because Randy Townsend's been arrested a couple of times already. So we don't want to follow him. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, I have a special connection because I was in the leadership of Colorado chapter of the Oath Keepers, so.
Oh, sweet.
I have lots of connections on that.
That's awesome. See, that's the one thing. I don't know one militia person in this area. I don't know where the hell to contact one. The one guy I did know is a moron, so I wouldn't have joined his group if he even begged me to. You know, it's just the guy asked me to go 40 miles to help him fix his vehicle, and come to find out he needed his tires to be balanced. That was it. I mean, that's the mentality of this young man, and he's the general of their group. So,
wow.
Yeah. So I was like, okay, this is a little ridiculous. I don't think I want to join one after seeing this.
Yeah, well,
but
there's unimpressive people in every group.
I hear you, and I understand that. To be honest with you, I've been so busy with all my own cases, to be honest with you, way before I got involved with the marshals, that I haven't had time to even mess with anybody else.
Well, we need them here in Colorado because there's only 2 right now.
Oh, I hear you. We need them everywhere. You know, and if I'm not mistaken, we're going, Justice Hamilton, I think, is coming for some training class to keep his insurance license up in Arlington, Texas, the 17th. And I think we're meeting up with Chief Jones that day to swear him in.
Nice.
So he's going to meet us wherever this place is at. We're going to meet and swear in Chief Jones, and I've got another gentleman that's coming up. The gentleman that is actually helping with the design of our IDs, he is coming up, and he wants to sign an oath too. I don't know which one yet, but I'm trying to get him to possibly be a grand jury member or administrator.
Right. If you're doing that and all the parties agree, maybe you could videotape that, and that would make a great post.
Sure would. I didn't think about that. Well, we sure could. I could have my wife videotape it.
Yeah, and then just send it to me, and I'll put it up.
Yep. See, that's one of the things I told the Texas Ranger on Friday. I said, do you know why they kept all of our stuff out there? He goes, no, why? I said, because my wife, we knew we didn't want any questions ever asked, so we videotaped the entire thing, our arrest and everything out there in New Mexico, and that is why they will not give us our phones back, because the truth is on that video.
What you need to learn to do is live stream that stuff to like Facebook or to YouTube. An app we've been working on is Zello for the Marshals group. And Schubert and I and a few other people are on that already. Swilly's on it. And we communicate back and forth, and you can live stream your encounters on the side of the road on that if you have to.
Well, that's something, if y'all don't mind, please share that with me. See, that's information I don't know. If you share that app or whatever with me, send it to me. I'll start using that, because, see, all we do is videotape. My wife, every time we get stopped, I just start videotaping.
Well, Zello is like a walkie-talkie app. I don't know if it has any video streaming, but you can live stream your voice onto the app, and it broadcasts to the whole group.
Okay.
But when I email you, I'll send you the information.
Okay, awesome. Appreciate it.
Yeah, that's the kind of thing that we should always have available with a group, chat, so we can put it on live.
Matter of fact, when Costley got his kids taken, he sent out a 911 on Zello, and all of us that were already on there got it, and we jumped right on trying to help him with it.
How's he doing, by the way?
That's awesome.
I haven't heard.
No, this is when that happens, it is so devastating. It's hard to tell what.
Well, yeah, because they hold your kids over your head, and it's like, are you going to stop doing what you're doing, or are you going to or do you want your kids? So that's what they do to you.
Yeah.
I haven't seen my kids in over a year, you guys. They took them 2 years ago.
See, that's the type of crap that's why that group down in Florida got stopped. It was because, if I'm not mistaken, they'd helped 28 kids back to their families. So they went arrested. Ended up arresting the guys. Now, I don't know what all the charges are down. I really don't. I've seen some of them, But then again, I've seen the 40 charges against Bruce Doucette too, and they're all a bunch of BS too. So
Right.
if you want to measure it across the board, what do you go with?
Well, I can tell you from my own experience, they do things like in Ronnie Davis's case, because he dealt with sensitive stuff. They probably shamed him or embarrassed him, or made the threat so huge to him that I can't imagine him caving, but he may have caved. He may have.
Well, I'll tell you this. We tried helping him. In fact, you can look on freecountry.com, and there is a Ronnie Davis file that got started, but they never would cooperate.
I know. I was following that.
So whoever was, talking to him or trying to get with him to get our help, they all stopped all communication with us completely. So to be honest with you, we have no earthly clue, but we tried. He refused. So that's why I say we don't know what's going on.
I don't know either. I was never able to find out on that.
That's why Carl Lentz got started in the law years ago, is because they snatched his kid from him, and it took him 10 years just to find out what their authority was to take his child, and it ended up being a bogus contract they were using that was actually somebody else's contract. And that's why he got so good at the law, is because he was fighting them getting his son back, and it took him like 10, 12 years.
Yeah, it's a horrible thing. When it comes to the kids,
they're ruthless.
Guys, I can't imagine. I really can't.
It's so criminal that I to try and even get my case done has been a nightmare. Because it is so deep and it's so criminal, and there's so many facets to it, and people involved. Yeah, doctors and attorneys and judges and and law enforcement. So you've got where this brings gang stalking to a whole new level.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
it really does. Yeah.
And I'll just tell you, and they break you financially, because I'll tell you what, just our New Mexico case, we have 31 defendants. Okay, 31 defendants, and for me just to mail out everything that we're putting into court, I have to send certified mail, not certified, but I have to mail every defendant everything I send to court so that they get a copy too. Just the mailing, regular mail costs me $50.14. They end up breaking you just in court fees and other mailing fees. So you literally have to be prepared for a battle, financially and emotionally, where you're not going to make it. And that's what I tell people. This is not easy. I've talked two people out of doing this court of record because I didn't feel like they were intelligent enough to defend themselves in court, because they wouldn't have. And I just told them, they will eat you alive. If you don't know what you're talking about, they will eat you alive in court, and you will go to prison. I said, I don't want you going to prison, so I'm telling you, you better use a de facto attorney, since it's some of your first charges, and you better ask for leniency and get probation. And then once you get off of all that crap, I said, start living a good life and start making a reputation of being on the good side and doing things right. And then when they file charges like a speeding ticket or something, you go to a court of record. I said, but you got to start learning first. You can't jump into this blindly. They'll eat you up.
No, we've been studying for years, and we're just starting to deal with traffic citations and stuff.
Right.
That's my, like Bill Thornton said, he's got 1,000 cases under his belt, and he said, my knees still shake every time I go to court. And people go,
I remember
why?
him saying that.
And he said, why? He said, because you never know what they're going to do next. I've had them change case numbers in the middle of a damn case so that you'll start filing on that false case, and so you miss the real deadline of the real case number.
Yeah.
Yeah,
they use so many tricks. See, this is why I decided to take the approach that I'm taking, which is I'm not going I'm not out to sue anybody yet. Okay.
Right.
I mean, I see that as, that there always has to be a remedy, and if that's where the remedy is, then fine, let's go that way. But I see where a lot of people have done that, and it's brought a lot of repercussions too. Against
and that's, you're right. And the problem, I'll tell you, the biggest problem is people get money hungry, and I hate that. And I tell you why. My first case with 12 defendants were $41,000 divided amongst all of them. Okay, that was my charges for them. Okay, now I had another person do $300,000, and the problem, and they did and my first court case went actually pretty smoothly per se, I would say, but other people that have put like $250,000 to $300,000 on a case, they have to fight you with everything they have. They can't afford to lose $300,000 when, like, my city here has $1.4 million annual budget. You really think they have $300,000 to blow on you? No. So they have to lie, cheat, steal, and possibly even kill you to make sure you don't get your $300,000.
They get pretty crazy. We have to consider that that's what we're dealing with. We're almost dealing with, like, I equate them to like gamblers. Okay, and if you've ever experienced someone in your life, who was a gambler, then you know that they become almost like possessed.
Yeah.
When it comes to that, it's like a drug. It's like this. They get like glossy-eyed. When they get ready to go, whole personality change and everything. And that's what I saw in the court. With all of the attorneys and the judge and all of them, they were like the gamblers, that were addicted. And so when the approach that I'm taking, is more of settling all of my accounts, and that includes all of the court things, because that's still just, it's commerce and it's a tax, and so putting it into the hands of the IRS and the Treasury to deal with, maybe fiscal services, I'm not sure yet. I'm not there. But, that way those things are going to come from a different direction, and ultimately it does come back to you, is the way that I comprehend it.
I think you're looking at it a little bit wrong, Swilly. It goes so much deeper than that. I mean, it's not just a thing or an addiction for them. They're worshiping their God.
Yeah.
I know.
Just like I tell people, money is not evil. The Bible says the love of money is the root of all evil, not money. Mm-hmm. Money isn't evil. The love of money. And that's the problem. Like I've told people these days, they don't care about the law. They care about winning.
Right.
And that's a problem, because the law has been thrown out the window, because winning is what it's made of. And you don't get your money unless you win. So they don't care what it takes. They will win. And that's where we have to take it out of their hands, out of their ability. And the court of record is the only choice we have. We cannot win in their court. You will never win in their court, ever.
No,
it's impossible.
No.
Don't even go in their court.
Yes. There's no sense to even walk in, because you cannot win. Now,
if you're Rod Class or you're Carl Lentz, you might be able to. But look at how long it took Carl Lentz to get it under, to get what he needed under his belt to get his kid back. 10 to 12 years?
The thing about Carl, though, is even though he on his calls, he acts like he goes into court and can just battle him, he always, every single time files his paperwork first and sets up his common law court. Every time.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's how you see, like Justice Hamilton taught me. He said one of the biggest fallacies that people do is they try to argue their point orally in court, and they will always stumble because of the questions and things that they get thrown at them. What you must do is put your paperwork must go in with everything lawful that you have to say, and it must be well thought out. And when you send it in, you let your paperwork speak for you.
Absolutely.
The only thing you ever say in court is what has already been put into your paper. And if they have a problem with it, even I tell other people, if they question you, you can literally say, it's all in the papers, please read it. And they'll say, no, I want you to tell me.
My paperwork.
And they tell them, well, they say, well, I want you to tell me, what do you think about this, sir? I don't have anything to say. It's everything I have to say is in my paperwork. Please read it.
Absolutely.
And if everybody would do that, then every court session would go lawfully, and they wouldn't have a problem. But when your words go against, on a court of record, go against your paperwork, your words matter, and they will use them against you. And I promise
they will
that.
Try to get you to say something.
Yes. And that's where you have to be staunch and keep your sense of what's going on. Just like as a doc, I used to tell people, I don't care what you've done in your past. I don't care who you've been or what kind of things you've done. When you go to a psychiatrist or a psychologist, you better know that you're in control of that situation. They only know what you want to tell them. But let me tell you, if you tell them more than you want and they trick you into answering questions, you can end up in places you don't want to be.
Oh, yeah.
Because they'll use it against you.
They can be pretty scary. I've heard of them kidnapping people and forcing medication and doing some crazy
and that's my
stuff.
point. You only tell them what you want to tell them, what you need help with. You're there for a reason. You go to get help for that reason. Don't get sucked into all the other stuff that comes along with the questions. You can tell them it's none of your business. You're the one paying them.
Right.
They're working for you. And we get this fallacy of, well, they're the doctor, they're in control. No, they're not. And
my doctor stood up for me against the court, and she invalidated, or whatever the proper terminology is, for that. She took everything that they did against me and invalidated it, and she's the one who said that they were gaslighting me. So she went a great distance, Now, they made sure that she didn't get paid, and I don't know.
Well, of course. She'll probably never even be able to work there again or ever get paid from them again. But at least she stood up for the truth. You know what I mean?
She did stand up for the truth. And she's an older woman. So, I'm really glad that I have that. Now, the only reason I have that is because I made a deal with the judge that I would go see her, if he would stop the proceedings.
Right.
I kept my end of the bargain.
Sure. And you know what? You kept your word. That's perfectly fine. And your agreement to the court is whatever you decide you want to do. That's part of being a people. You get to choose.
Yeah, he wouldn't allow her testimony, though, after that. And he wouldn't allow her documentation or anything. So.
Well, of course not, because he saw his revenue disappearing.
Yeah, she stood up. So.
That's
but
why
hey,
you can
I have
never
her
win in their
documents.
court.
No, exactly. You can't. Even with that, I didn't make any progress whatsoever. None.
Mm-mm. And that's what's sad is even though they're required by law to obey every case law and every thing above codes and statutes, they don't and they won't. And that's the leeway that the judges have been given in the past, and that is where the court of record takes that completely out of their hands. They don't have a choice.
Right.
See, we can go to them in their courts and say, look, it says here that you can't, no codes or statutes and, all this common law, and they go, yeah, well, you're not in that court.
Right.
And the judge will tell you, and you'll do what I say.
We continue to battle, right? And
yes, ma'am.
Knowing that, they are just criminals, and they're also capable of hurting and harming. And, they have no problem taking our people and locking them up, apparently for... See, I watched others do tests on how long could they hold someone without their consent. And I know people that absolutely no consenting, and it used to be that 3 days was it. That was the maximum amount of time. And then that started stretching out to more like 10 days. And then
they did DW 30.
Right.
And then they extended
now, DW, though, in all fairness, okay, DW did have a warrant from another state.
And there were some crimes that were committed.
Exactly. So under those circumstances, what I've noticed in observing is that it seems like anyone that had something prior and then maybe took an oath of office and, started correcting things, it still didn't work because of that. Have you noticed that?
Yes. And that goes to prove that, guess what? Common law and de facto are very similar when you commit a crime. You will pay, and they will make sure you do.
Right.
And to be honest with you, you deserve it when you commit a crime. That's just fact. We all know that. It's common law. When you commit a crime, which is harming another person or their property, you've committed a crime. And that is what he did, and he admitted to it. The only difference, and just as I told the Texas Ranger, is I looked across the table at Dixie the night after we got out of jail, and it was me and her sitting at the table that night, and I looked across the table and I said, let me tell you something. Let me explain. Just because if we still get DW out and he goes before a common law grand jury does not mean he's out of trouble. I said, in fact, if this lady presses charges because of the things that were stolen and other things and other people, houses broken into, and they can prove it, and they press charges, I said, do you realize that he can get 40 years? He can get 10 years. I said, it's up to the grand jury. I said, so just because I'm trying to bring him home does not get him out of trouble. I said, I want you to really understand that because there were crimes committed. And she said, I understand. And I said, okay. Harm. There was harm. I said, so I just have to tell you, I'm here for you, and I was here to bring him home, but I was not here to get him out of trouble. That was not what I was here for.
Right. And I get it. Maybe, in between times, he really, started getting himself together. I mean, DW was so helpful.
From my understanding, he had some drug problems in the past, and he was a drug addict. And once he found the truth and he got in trouble or whatever, and he found common law, from my understanding, he traded his addiction to the law and studying the law. And that became his addiction, which is awesome because it took him away from what was the drugs, the problem, and it was gaining knowledge in the process. Great. That's what we should all do. And so that's what he did. The problem is just like everybody else, your problems follow you.
Yeah. Right.
So we have to realize that.
It's awfully hard to help somebody get out of something when they've already, And that's what I noticed.
And that's what I told everybody. I said, we went out there and got arrested because it was literally a battle of the U.S. Marshals versus the Continental Marshals. And nobody was willing to give up because they had him on crimes that are crimes. He literally committed these things.
Right.
I mean, he admitted to them. So, that's where the big battle became. And like I looked at the so-called U.S. Marshal, I looked him at his face and I said, you could have handled this 1,000 different ways and you chose the wrong one. I said, you could have easily asked me, hey, we would have put our weapons in the box just as we were instructed. We could have walked in with the paperwork we had already handed you. You could have said, hey, look, we're not going to let this guy go because he committed crimes and we're going to extradite him. And I would have walked outside, called the justices and Chief Haywood said, look, they're not going to let him go. Done. It's over. I'm going back to Texas. Yeah. I said, but you chose to arrest us and all this mess for nothing.
Yeah.
Because the judge let us go for nothing. She knew we did nothing wrong. So.
Is everybody done with their cases there, or what's going on with
No.
what's going on?
I just sent 6 documents. One was a writ of error or a demand for the, believe it or not, only out of the 31 defendants, only I think one attorney contacted us, and it's for I think 6 or 8 people out of the 31, and it's for the detention center people. But the problem, we've now put a rebuttal because he's trying to file some paperwork to dismiss the case, but yet he's a bar attorney. And in a court of record, no bar attorney is allowed. So we've questioned, is he a bar attorney? Because if he is, he's not allowed to even represent anyone in a court of record, period. So he hasn't answered that. So with that, the judgment will go out probably in a week or so, and we'll have won that case. What I can't understand is why the news media people didn't send their attorneys to defend them. That's $1.8 million lawsuit against them.
No kidding.
Yeah, I don't get it. Not one other defendant sent any paperwork, and only for the 6 or 8, and it was the Valencia County people only. They hired an attorney to represent all of them. But everybody else, nothing. Oh, and remember that we were arrested by the so-called U.S. Marshal Jeremy Vaughn was the one that arrested us? There's a new article out about the story that they just did about DW being transferred to Pennsylvania and everything. And it states Jeremy Vaughn from the New Mexico State Police states such and so. He's no longer claiming to be a U.S. Marshal.
Isn't it true?
Really?
Isn't it true that the marshals lost their contract and most of them are working for the state police in whatever state they're in?
Yeah, they lost their. In fact, the U.S. government lost their charter in 2015. There's no longer any so-called U.S. Marshals since 2015. And the way that they work it is they must pay for their own contracts, and they have 3-month contracts working with the state police. But if they must arrest enough to pay their contracts, and that is why we realized they put a $50,000 cash bond on the 4 of us. And that's why the judge, when I pointed out to the judge, I said, did you see where the so-called U.S. Marshal, Jeremy Vaughn, stated that he saw us walk in with sidearms into the front when we turned in the paperwork to come around, and then they still instructed us to go to the Sally Port, which we did, and then they arrested us for having weapons in the Sally Port? She said, I saw that. She said, I caught that too. I said, yes, ma'am. I said, yeah. You saw me with them, and then you told me to go around and arrest me because I went around with them.
So, but as far as the charges on our marshals,
now that they dropped all those on the 8th of April. We had to go back. See, that was another crazy thing. The Judge Garcia is a lady. She said, will you promise me, since you're in Texas, that you'll come back so I don't have to send anybody to come get you because these are extraditable offenses? I said, ma'am, I'm giving you my word. If you tell us to come back, I'll come back. I said, okay. She said, okay. So she let us go. So on the 6th of April, which was a Monday, I called and said, hey, do we have to go back March 6th, I called out there and said, hey, do we have to go back out there for court on the 8th? And the clerk said, yes, it's still on the docket. Everything's still good. You have to be here. Crap. Okay. So on the 7th, my wife and I jumped back in the truck, and we traveled all the way back out there, 11 hours to get back out there, spend the night with Dixie, go to court the next day on the 8th. We pull up to the window. All 3 of us have to be in court. We walk up to the window. They hand us papers and said, it is a term no court has seen in 25 years. It is a term that says we find no fault and we find no charges we can get against these people. It's what the Latin term is. And it was filed on the 2nd of March, which meant I didn't have to travel back out there.
Yeah.
It was already filed on the 2nd of March, and I called on the 6th, and they go, oh, yeah, you do. You see what they do? So we traveled 22 round-trip hours for nothing so we could go out there and turn around and come home.
They're responsible for reimbursing you for that.
Oh, yeah. Well, if I get paid the $1.8 million from any of it, I won't complain about the $180 in gas. So
right.
I promise I will chalk it up as even.
Any word on Tom Benson?
No, I haven't. I know that there was some paperwork that Justice Hamilton was finishing up for Lynn to file for him.
Okay.
I think it's literally an attack from that one cop, and we know it. That's where all this came from, and it's all because he's gotten 5 people's homes back, and they cannot stand him out there. It's kind of like the people here with me. These local cops literally can't stand me, and same thing with him out there. Why? Because we've beaten them. We've shown them that we won't put up with their abuse. And so
you're hurting
they'll
their pocketbooks.
Yeah, you're hurting their revenue, and so they've got to find some way of stopping you. So what better way than to throw us in jail for stupid things? And that's why I stay as clean. I don't do anything. I don't.
Yeah, you and me both.
Crazy.
That's when you're talking about, when somebody finishes their probation and whatever it is, and then they, are ready to live a good, clean life and self-govern, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Can't self-govern and be calling, the de facto in every 2 minutes or running off to get, some kind of aid.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've got a tidbit to share with you guys. I have a friend in Denver. When the 8 first got arrested, I asked him to look into it because I knew he had some connections over there. Mm-hmm. And apparently the FBI are telling people that they were arrested because they recruited marshals that have felonies. That's what they're telling people.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's kind of like them in New Mexico. They were telling us, this is what I told the Texas Ranger the other day, too, because he asked me about the New Mexico case. I said, do you realize that we had sidearms on us and not one thing was ever mentioned about the sidearms? But yet the news article, everything says we tried to come in and break a man out of jail with knives. Knives.
Oh, that's right. I read that. What? All right. Yeah.
I said, do you understand how stupid that is? I said, the first thing.
Asinine.
Yeah, I mean, that's the most asinine thing. I said, for one thing, do you realize for you to open any door in that entire prison, there's one lady or person sitting at the central station and must push the button when she sees the person, and they must ask her to open the damn door? I said, that's the only way you're going to get in any door. How the hell are you going to break anybody out? I don't care if you had a gun. You can't get in.
Or a chainsaw, for that matter.
I don't care what you had. By the time you figured it out, they'd have plenty of people there standing. I'm like, what morons are y'all? Come on.
Do you know what that tells? Do you know what that tells you? It tells you that the press just thinks the public is that stupid.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And in fact, they're so stupid that they believe that we notified them ahead of time that we were coming with knives to break this guy out of jail. That's how stupid. You see how? I mean, this is Dumb and Dumber all over again. You know what I'm saying?
No doubt.
No doubt.
So, all right, guys, I gotta get. I hate to run, but I've got to eat. I haven't even eaten supper yet. I've been on the phone so long. So.
Well, we've been on here for a long time. It's been a good call, and thank you.
Definitely. Thank you.
You're welcome.
We may have to split this last portion out into its own little segment.
Yeah, we might have to. That's fine.
Hey,
All right, you guys, take care, and I guess we're going to call it a night unless anybody else has anything. I don't know if there's anybody left on the call. We have any callers left out there?
I think it might just be the three of us.
Oh, yeah, all right. I knew it was pretty quiet. All right, you guys, good night. Take care of yourself. God bless.
God
Good
bless
night.
Good to
y'all.
you.
Thanks again, Randy.
Hey, not a problem, brothers. Y'all take care, sisters, and like I said, anything y'all need, please just email me, okay?
Sounds good.
Thank you.
All right.
For
y'all
sure.
Take care.
Good night.
Okay, you too.
Good night.
Good night.